specifically that are really important. And then what we would do is use that to inform the budgetary process for 2025, and then hopefully come back either late winter or early spring once we have that comp plan document and you guys have all reviewed it, so that we can put together our next 2-year strategic plan that'll have goals. One thing I've heard about some of these documents we're creating is that we want to have very clear performance indicators for these goals and make sure that we're really tackling our goals that make the most sense and not trying to take on the whole world at once. And I think that this process would really allow us to do that in a meaningful and really kind of deliberate way. And so that's why I'm proposing that. But I think that that's really a decision for you. If you guys would like to go through the strategic plan process first, we can likely schedule it. It will probably require some sort of work session so that we can get through the planning process first. And so I just want to make sure that we're building that in if we need to do the whole thing before the budget, or if we can do kind of an abbreviated process and then update it next year.
And just to clarify, so this abbreviated would just evaluate whether any objectives require updating in accordance with the budget.
Yeah, and we'll have our update September 19th, I believe, is the strategic plan update and grant update. And we've got a couple of things with the grants, we're making progress on those. So we'll bring those updates to you at that time. And then I think on these projects that we have, there's some longer term kind of plays and some of this ongoing work. So we can update you where we are. And I think we need to think about things like other projects that have been kind of going around that we may be to a planning phase now where we could complete them. And if that's the case, if we can do that in 2025, I'd like to add that to the list just so that we can budget for it and it kind of relates back to the plan. But I think if we go through that process, we can do that at the meeting that's already scheduled for that work and probably get through most of it where we're comfortable with what we're going to do for 2025 and then update that plan as we move forward.
I'm personally okay with that.
Yeah, same.
Looks like you have nods of 4.
Nod.
You have lots of nods.
And then you also had a request for direction on the budget. And it was more like if people look at this second to last paragraph on page 23 about just how we'd lay out our budget sessions.
Yeah, and what we're thinking is we want to make sure we're bringing you good information that is actionable and not repeating things as we go. And so where we are now, Rita has just sent me the first early draft for me to review of the budget that kind of shows some of our revenue expectations, as well as kind of our initial idea of what expenditures might look like next year. There's going to be a special session of the state legislature here coming up soon, and that is going to significantly impact what we do for property tax next year, one way or the other. So we need to be kind of watching that process to make sure our numbers and our projections are correct. What we'd like to do is continue our work with the department heads. For instance, Andrew has got like a capital improvement list that he has to work through in water and wastewater. We need to make sure we identify the projects. You guys went through this process before. And so what we'd like to do is get kind of a good first draft of this budget, what we're looking at, have a session with you and make sure you kind of understand where we're coming from on all that kind of stuff, and then bring that back. And the question ultimately is, how many meetings would you guys like to have about the budget? We can probably do it in as few as 2, but we could also add another in there if you want, if there's a higher level of detail you want on certain things, or if you want to dive into, like, say, our capital plan or something like that. What we need to know is we need to set this timeline for what you guys would like to do. Would you like to have work sessions? Would you like to have discussion items? How do you want to kind of handle this work? Because it's going to be, we can go to the level of detail that you guys would like.
My first thought is half the board is new for this budget. I see head shaking all around. And I know the first time I went through the budget is just had to slow down on a few things. And so while I would say 2, I would still say 3, I wouldn't be opposed, just so that we can make sure our newest board members are feeling comfortable and asking all the questions that they can. It's my personal go with that.
And I would think a combination of work sessions and meeting discussion items, simply because, the discussion items during the meeting is when the public actually dials in.
Yeah.
Work sessions have much lower attendance and people paying attention. So including some of that, a significant amount of it during our regular meetings has given us the best feedback in the past.
Okay. I have this initial draft of the budget. I need to go through it to make it to make sure we're on our assumptions are correct, where we're kind of thinking. And what I would like to do is bring that document to you. It will not be finished then. It will be kind of a rough draft of just kind of, and what you can expect to see is our general idea of what revenues might look like next year. And this is, of course, a very conservative model at this point. And then we could also talk about some of our bigger expenses that we're going to have. It will not be a fully fledged everything in there, but this will kind of give you a very kind of base level view, and we can have Rita walk through what we pay for and how it works. And then what we'll do is we'll schedule a work session and make sure we have plenty of time to process all that thing. I think we can avoid repetitive meetings where
That'd be
we're really
great.
talking about departments and you guys have a good idea of where we're at. We don't really have to finish this until right before the holiday. So I think we have plenty of time to get this done. So I will put together a timeline based on what you've told me, and then I can present that as we're kind of moving forward, if that's okay with you all.
Well, last year it seemed like, yeah, we were seeing kind of a PowerPoint repeatedly. I mean, we were definitely building and tweaking things along the way. So anything that we're tweaking or, making decisions about, that makes sense. But some things, if we decided on them, we can leave them out of the following PowerPoint kind of thing.
Great.
I can't see. I don't have my glasses on. Is Rita on? Okay, so then I want to ask this question to you, Jonathan. It was the same question that I asked last time, as to the decrease in revenue from law enforcement. Do we know the crux of why that is?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So essentially, it's basically when we do traffic work with the BCSO, that's an extra duty shift for that sheriff. The deputies that we're using, and we all know there's been some challenges getting our staff in place in Nederland. And so they're working on that. I think we're pretty close to the point where we'll have the staff that we were expecting in the contract. But that extra duty shift, they'll come up and do basically a 6-hour shift of traffic tickets. Those are kind of that revenue source isn't 100% dependable, like where you can forecast it exactly, because A, people might not be speeding, or B, there may be some reason why if somebody gets called off a shift, they may not actually meet the revenue expectation. So we've been meeting about this. I think this is something that we want to talk about with the sheriff's office and determine whether or not we actually want to pursue spending our dollars on extra traffic duty and whether that's worth it. And that's a question that I think I'm going to be meeting with the sheriff next week. And we're going to be talking about the contract, because he is also aware that this is a lot of money for our community that we're spending, and he wants to make sure that we're getting a good bang for our buck too. So I think that's a question that I'll bring before the board, is whether you want to continue that work or not.
Okay, so irregardless, I guess, if, the net revenue is down, let me ask a separate question in that, are we actually generating revenue to be net positive from the investment that we are making into this extra duty?
Not every day, but overall, yes. And I think that's one of the things, if we do continue the consistency of what we're expecting, it needs to be part of our scope of service with the sheriff's office. So
Yep.
I think it's just one of those things. It just needs to be, we need to communicate what it needs to be, because we're paying for that. So we need to make sure we're not losing money any day.
100%. And I ask, especially for all the reasons that you're already talking to him, and especially a couple of meetings ago, it was suggested that we should increase that for next year. And yet I see numbers like this. And so that's why I ask.
One option I think is worth considering that I know you guys considered last year, and there's definitely pluses and minuses to it, but
Don't say it.
well, I
Don't
think
say it. Speed cameras. Don't say
it
it.
could be a thing. But, I think there's pluses and minuses there for sure. And I don't know that we should count on that as a revenue source for the town, or if we
Right.
could be thinking about other things.
Yeah.
So I think the key is that we want our law enforcement to be doing law enforcement activities when they're here. And maybe that's just not the best use of their time, is really the question.
I think, like all things, it should be a discussion point,
Mhm.
right? So
Can I just ask a question? Like, do they have a time limit till they can, do they have a deadline that they have to meet to get us fully staffed up here, or last spring? Cool. Okay.
It was the summer, which 2/3 of the way through the summer. So I don't know. I don't know where they're at. I mean, I brought it up to one of the commissioners the other day, and she's like,
Well,
we can't find anyone to do it. Do you want to be a cop? And I said, no, but
I'll do it again if I have to. But
yeah.
I don't really
For
want
sure.
to. But
That was the
But I mean, their challenge is everyone, is pretty national.
Sure. I
It's
just,
just finding people to.
we won't be paying this extra duty, right? If we get our
Right.
staff.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, the extra duty for traffic is kind of a separate thing, but just for coverage, yeah, we would get to our deputy. We're paying that contract now because some of them are hired and being trained and going through the process. We're supposed to get more experienced deputies that actually come here. And the newer folks would work down below where they have more mentoring and just,
Right.
back
Yeah,
up.
no, you don't want to be a new police officer up here. It doesn't work out.
So you've heard.
So I've experienced.
So real quick on the topic of finance and budget and going all the way down through everyone's budget, it looks like as a benefit, some departments are, negative 35% in their expenditures and everything. My question is whether or not that's going to catch up at the end of the year. And that's just a very, just this time and moment snapshot.
I say probably yes. It may not be where I think we probably can still see savings across all departments. We've all been trying, and when Miranda was here too, to be very conservative about spending. But there's things that we need to take care of that we're going to have to do. And I think Andrew's a perfect example of that. We've got a couple projects that are really big, and it's kind of starting to turn into one of those, just a priorities thing. So we're really trying to be judicious about that, but I think you will see some of those line items increase.
Okay, so yeah, your negative 45K, Andrew, in supplies, that'll catch up by the end of the year, which is fine. Oh, okay. Anyway, okay. Budget. May see that increase in the Municode thing. That's Municode, right? Municode? Yeah, okay. Jerks. Anyway,
That's actually a kind of a cool thing. They're going to allow us to do unlimited ordinance updates. So it's going to allow us to keep our code up to date all the time of having to wait so long. Basically, we don't have to pay per ordinance anymore. So it's going to make Macy a lot more effective, like as she's working with them. And I think
I
that's kind of the-
misunderstood that. I thought
Yeah.
it was that we now have 4 to, whatever time or amount of ordinances to update, but you're saying it's unlimited now.
essentially.
Yeah, it's a flat annual rate. of,
Nice, okay.
I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but
That's-
3,000
okay.
and change.
Yep.
And
$3,953.70.
thank you, Nicole. Mayor Pro Tem.
But it's a fixed cost versus a
Yes.
variable.
Yes, so it's an annual rate of 3,943. And then obviously we've been paying per supplement. And so what a supplement is a grouping of, it depends, every time is different, but maybe 3 to 6 ordinances that get published into code at one time. And so they were charging us per supplement to be published, and those are running about $1,840. And we were publishing, it depends on per year is different, but maybe 3 to 6 supplements per year. So 1,840 times 3 at a
Yeah.
minimum. And the annual rate makes a lot more sense.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah, it was good calculations. I think we've published 3 supplements already in 2024.
Okay,
So it already, judging by our numbers, made sense to do the flat annual rate.
well then, thank you. Well done.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Keep going here. The last couple of updates have said that we were going to go out to bid for safer main streets in a couple of weeks. Are we closer to that? And if there's anything stopping it, how can we help?
You will see that project completed this year.
Okay.
I'm fairly confident we can get across the line on that. We have some CDOT concurrence we're working on that's taken a little bit longer than we thought.
Okay,
TIPS is a different story, and there's some more complicated things happening there that we need to, we can talk about like during our grant update, but I think Safer Main Streets, there's a pretty good chance that we can get that out to bid pretty quickly.
okay.
Um,
And done by the end of the year.
I hope so. It depends on the concrete and
Okay.
how we can do it, but if we can get some of that work done this fall, we are either finishing in the spring or hopefully knocking it out, but we'll see.
Okay, cool. And then I think this is the last one on budget. Andrew, are there the new grip pump? Is there any cost to us on that?
No, the contractor's been really good
Okay,
covering everything, no questions asked.
all right, there you go. All right, any other questions?
Yes, there's a question that Andrew has about us giving a nod of 4 direction on the potholing project on page 63. This is evaluating, it's kind of a random sampling evaluation of potential lead contamination.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll pick your house.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a new federal regulation that is targeting lead service lines. Historically, water regulations looked at lead from a water quality sampling perspective. But after Flint and as we've modernized, the acceptance of having lead service lines in the ground nationwide has diminished. So really the industry and regulators are pushing for just finding lead water pipes and getting rid of them, whether the customer owns them, whether the public owns them, et cetera. As part of that, we have a deadline of every water system in the country has a deadline of October 16th of this year of inventorying the service lines, whether it's private or public, in its system. And Town Hall has been going through all of our records, trying to find all of the records that we have. It may not be shocking to you, but our records of service lines are not fantastic. So we have a lot of unknown service lines of unknown material. And we've got some options. So on one hand, before October 16th, the state allows us to randomly sample 20% of pre-1960 homes to pothole, scratch the service line underground, and confirm what material that is. And if none of those, if those 20% of random selection potholes, if they come back and we don't find any lead, and we don't find any lead in any of our records, which we haven't, then we can commit to, we can tell the state that, hey, we are a lead-free community. And then we need to have a process for any time a service line comes exposed, then we have a process for confirming that later. But if that ran through that gives us a process of not digging up every single service line in the town and being able to confirm that our community is lead-free. On the other end of the spectrum, and so we've got a quote for that, and it's expensive. The lowest quote we got was $200,000 to do that. And that's a max of, that's kind of worst case scenario of doing that. On the other end of the spectrum is we could just publish the materials that we know of, and then every house that we don't know the material, we need to send that house a letter and say, hey, we don't know what material your service line is, even though it's owned by you. We don't know what service line material this is, and it could be lead. And then, so we could do that by October 16th and meet this regulatory requirement. And that would not cost a lot of money. Along with that, we are getting free technical support from an engineer that's hired by the state. They say that the state is going to have a funding available next year to help communities do the potholing that we got a quote for. It's not available this year, but it's going to be available next year. So those are the two ends of the spectrums of spending a lot of money to dig them all up, and hopefully we can say, hey, we're a lead-free community. And then the other spectrum is don't spend a lot of money and send these letters out. If we do the full project, we'll need a supplemental budget. And then I think looking at my budget expenses to date with Rita's assistant, and this has all been with help with John as well. I think I can find savings of $85,000 in my this year's budget on the water side. That we could do that project up to $85,000 without doing a supplemental budget. And my hope is that, we could scrap together whatever extra is needed, and we could reach that goal of saying we're a lead-free community. It would still be an expense to the town that could potentially be covered by future funding in the future. So hopefully that's not too confusing, but that's the gist.
So,
Go ahead.
Clear as mud.
yeah, so with this, the potholing project, it's the 20% of the pre-60 service lines that you'd actually be doing in the next 2 months.
Yeah.
How many is that?
50?
It's exactly. So it's 50, but the quote I got was for 70. So it's 2 potholes at 50 homes is what we have to do. I got quotes for 2 potholes at 75 homes, just to add a level of safety of if we struggle in any way, we can, and the state said that's allowed, if we could skip an address if there's any issues.
And there was, I heard you say $200,000 before?
Yeah.
I see 100,000 here, a little over 100,000. But 85,000 is
I think I
close to
wrote this
100,000.
before. I think I wrote this before I received the quotes. I knew it was going to be over 100,000. I was hoping it was going to be closer to 100,000 than it was.
We'd probably be dipping into
I
reserves
was
out of
gonna
water and
ask.
wastewater funds.
Can we pull from both water and sewer?
We could. The thing with the option about waiting, we'd still do this work. We're not going to delay it. We'd just be trying to get grant funding from the state next year. So we could make the same decision next year. But we just wanted to, there really is 3 options. And I think it's important that this is enough money that I think it needs to come to the board.
Mhm. And there's a chance that we don't get that grant funding.
Correct.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I always speak first. Any thoughts?
What's your guess on how these letters are going to land?
Oh, they're gonna love it.
Hey, you might
Yeah.
have lead in your pipe.
So in 2021, the town did lead sampling. The results came back great, but there's a requirement to whatever house you sample, you have to share the results directly with those homeowners. And the town was late doing that. And so we had to issue a letter just saying, hey, we were late reporting the lead results to the participants. I remember receiving that letter as a resident in 2021, and I remember there being a lot of public confusion and concern. Maybe we could write a better letter and try to make this as clear as possible. But I think anytime you talk about lead with drinking water, there's a lot of concern.
But to be clear, in all your research and the digging, we have yet to find any evidence of lead pipes, and we
That's-
have not tested for lead contamination in any of our, above the levels in all of our tests.
That's correct. Yeah. We're not 100% done with every document, but so far we haven't seen any. And I talked with Chris Peltier, the previous public works manager, and he wasn't aware of any service lines, and he dug up a lot of places.
Maybe you could add that to the letter. It's like,
I think it makes sense to send a letter out and word it well, and then make a shot at getting some grant money. Otherwise, we're paying out of reserves for this otherwise.
Which may be the thing that we have to do.
Right. We may have to
Anyway.
do that anyway, but at least this way we have a chance to get some.
We could also
offset.
put that in the 2025 budget in
Right.
such a way that it's covered either way, and then we don't have to do a supplemental, which is fine. It's fine to do that, but my preference would be to not have to do a supplemental if we didn't have to. But if we have to, we have to. So
Okay, but going back to John, what you said, the work is still going to be done.
yeah, we would complete this work either way. I think this is something we all want to make sure we get right. So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of if the other question is, October 16th is creeping up. So it's we may have to send that letter no matter what, potentially. But I think, Andrew, your conversations with the contractor suggest that we could get it done.
Yeah, the low bid contractor did this work for Fort Collins in the city of Boulder. The reference from city of Boulder just called me back. I need to call him back. But the contractor thinks they could do it, before that October 16th deadline pretty easily.
John, are you suggesting though that if we budget it in 2025, we pay the contractor then?
I think the choice would be if we think that grant funding is a reasonable source that we could get. There's also, again, like DOLA EIF money. And if this is a $200,000 project, we could go for a lower tier grant because we're going to be spending that money anyway. So we could make this project like $100,000 through that program, which would be a pretty competitive application, I'd imagine, because it's a 50% match. So there's 2 separate funding sources potentially, but both of them are really inaccessible to us for the rest of this year. So what one option would be is we go for that grant funding, but we budget it either way. And if we have to dip into reserves to do it, then that's what we would do if we don't get the funding. Or if we do, like Andrew said, we could potentially probably put the money together this year and get it done. And then we just preclude that option for the grant funding.
What I'm not excited about with that idea, though, is that causes you to scrape for everything else moving forward. Would that be a fair statement? Or,
Yeah, I tried to be pretty conservative with that estimate of 85,000. So still left in there if we need help with a water main break from a contractor, if we need extra chemicals, I put several protections in there.
Okay.
So the main concern with pushing it off to potentially next year is sending out a letter that can cause public confusion and concern and just putting it off. Like, it would be great to know that we are lead free. Is that right?
That's 100% correct. But it much more simple than me. Thank you.
if we were to go the letter route, could we articulate that there may be lead in 2025? It is our intention to complete a full study.
The other thing too, we can put in there, and I talked to Andrew about this, but Andrew has the ability to test anybody's water. And so if somebody has a concern that they might have lead,
They
we can
raise
have
their
them bring it to Andrew and he can test it and make sure.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't meet the test requirements for the state. That water test, we've got to look at the actual metal physically.
Tanya, what do you think? We're looking at specifically page 63, the question that Andrew's asking us about potholing, this potholing project to evaluate water line, service lines, or
Yeah.
something.
So it sounds like we want to do this regardless, but we don't really want to do a supplemental budget, but we want or we're waiting to get grant money. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, but I mean, the potential for grant money in 2025 would be, higher just because we have time.
Higher. Gotcha.
'Cause there's a
So
deadline of
it's
October
this,
16th.
is it staff recommendation to wait then? Is that what Andrew and Jonathan are hoping? Just like we
Staff
wait?
recommend moving forward with the potholing project this year. A contract and possibly a supplemental budget will need to be approved by the board. That's less.
Okay. Now,
just
I
wanna
also
be-
heard Andrew say that we have $85,000 in surplus and it may not cost 200,000, that it could just cost 85 or.
That's delaying a couple of projects potentially, but they're not critical infrastructure projects.
Mhm.
And then the other money would come from our reserves. So that's kind of what we would do is we'd take the money, which there is a healthy reserve in both the water and wastewater funds. So it's possible.
Would we be able to apply for grants after the fact though?
No,
After we've already spent, so what is the staff recommendation? We wait to apply for grants or we just do it?
it would be with the financial situation of the town, it would always be better if we can use somebody else's money to do a project like this. I think it's important to note that when we do this potholing project, we're not going to be replacing lead lines if they were found. They're just going to be identified. So that is something, but the person would just know what's in the ground is kind of what we would be doing. So if we waited, there's a pretty strong likelihood that we could find a funding source that could at least subsidize part of this cost, or we could just take it on ourselves. That's really the question. Should we try to find somebody who can subsidize for us, or should we just pay for it and just get it knocked out?
Yeah, either way, we do think it's important or
Yes.
it's actually required. Am I?
Yes, and we want to do it
What-
quickly too. We just that was the question, I think.
What does it look like if a lead pipe is discovered? And like you just said, doesn't mean we're necessarily going to replace it. Like, what does that look like for said homeowner? Where does that go?
Yeah, that's very good question. So if, let's say we do this potholing project and we do a lead pipe, that would mean we would have to inventory more, first of all, which I know is not what you're asking, but that would be a consequence. We would have to pothole more service lines then. Our code says the service line is owned by the property owner. So if you just look at the code, it would be the customer's responsibility to replace. I will say the industry has moved to, the utility doesn't care who owns it. They just want to get lead out. That would require a lot more conversation with everyone, but that's just where the industry is heading.
So it's kind of moving further than I probably really want to, but that whole lining system that they do on a lot of those old pipes now, is that like an option for lead or?
No, I don't think so. Lead wasn't used for large pipe, and you can't line small pipe.
Okay.
So service lines are too small.
Okay.
To line.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there grant money available, or would there be, given that how the markets, how the industry is kind of changing its stance? Is there grant money available for replacing lead lines on the owner's side of the?
Yeah. The other thing I would mention, another alternative is if we do go for a tier 1 grant from DOLA, those have rolling applications. We might be able to sneak one in pretty quickly, but I don't know that we could meet the October 16th deadline. That would be the challenge, because it's probably at least a couple of month review process. And it really depends on DOLA and where they're at, and if we can do that, because sometimes it just depends on what we're asking for. But we could do a little bit more research on that and then come back to you if that's an option.
Well, I wonder if we could do plan to send the letters, spend the 85,000 doing as much potholing as we can, and go for one of these turnarounds with DOLA or more, and not go into reserve, but spend that what's budgeted.
Could you get a quick answer from DOLA on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if we just go ahead and spend this money and do the potholing, and let's say we do find lead pipe somewhere, in the next year, let's say it's a homeowner situation, can the homeowner apply for some kind of grant to get that lead pipe taken out and replaced after we've done this?
I think that's what Billy just asked.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think from what Andrew said, the utilities are starting to take that burden on.
Okay.
That's how I heard that. And so it might be
Okay.
that the town goes for that money to replace lead pipes on the owner's property.
Oh, okay. Okay. My bad.
I just want to reiterate that we have not found a single record. of
Sure.
lead
Yeah,
pipes or
no.
anything.
I'm just
Yeah.
trying to look into the future.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's important. It's important stuff. Yeah.
At this point, I will speak for me personally. I'm either way. Where did your guys' gut tell you would like to be? I'd like to know that. Just give us the straight answer.
Straight answer, I really don't want to send that letter out. We have really good water here. We work really hard, and I would just hate for the public
So let's get it done.
image of. And I also don't want to do a supplemental budget, and I feel pretty confident that with $85,000, I think we could really push ourselves to get it done and get creative. We've got a mini excavator, we've got staff, we can do some of it ourselves and meet in the middle and get it done.
And I don't think we should be afraid of a supplemental budget.
Yeah.
If we need to do one, quite frankly, last fall, I expected that we'd end up having to do one this year. So far we haven't. So
At the same time, it is a lot of time to put that together with everything else and strategic plan and budget and everything else.
The other question would be, do you want to use Andrew's budget to do that, or do you want to just take it out of reserves? Because the money is there in reserves, and that would allow Andrew to continue working on those other projects.
Yeah, that's why I personally would like to just take it out of reserves.
Do you have the staff to do both? Or is this going to add staff time that taking away from the other projects?
Yeah, it would definitely take away from other projects.
If we hire the contractor, though, just take care of it like we talked about, that all Andrew would really be doing is documenting the paperwork.
Because right now we're saying, stay focused, do what you're doing. We're going to take it out of reserves and pay the contractor.
Yeah, I think, with the way I wrote that, the quote was, we'll do data collection. So we'll need to locate this. There would be some involvement, but yes, the staff involvement would be much reduced with the contractor, correct?
Do we put a limit on the amount? Because I mean, we've heard 200,000, we've heard 100,000. A limit on how much we pull out of reserves?
What was I don't remember the exact number on that contract.
Yeah, it was low 2000s. The contractor said this is
207, I think
Yeah,
it was.
exactly. That's I think-
200,000.
Yeah.
And if we split it between the two funds, right, then
And you can still apply for the DOLA grant anyway, right? Just
We're not gonna be able to do that for this project if we take this route. So DOLA money, the grant money is likely off the table if we do the work, but that doesn't mean it's off the table for other work that we have upcoming. So this is really what that reserve is for in water and wastewater. Although we want to try to keep it for bigger projects, it's a pretty good use of that funding.
it's public safety.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Andrew. I think the letters going out will just be the worst choice.
Yes, it's gonna hype.
We can bring that supplemental budget back to you pretty quickly and still meet what we need to do here. So if this is the direction that you guys have, we can put that together and bring it back at our next meeting potentially.
I nod that way.
Yeah, I think I'd like to
Yeah.
just get it done.
Okay.
Yep.
And then are you interested we can get a not to exceed in that when we bring that contract back?
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And any more, I think those were the only requests for direction. Any more questions or comments on staff reports?
Just real quick, I have a question. Can we go to BOT reports? I have
Yeah.
a question on that.
Sure.
Hey, Tanya, just real quick. I noticed in your report, it said that the performance space needed additional studies. Is that something that the NDD is currently pursuing?
Well, we'll see. I mean, it was talked about. There's a couple people on the NDDA that don't want to keep putting more money into it.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm gonna advocate that. I think what we wanted to do, we already did the JVA. They've got the floodplain. We got their kind of general design. And then we thought like what we need now is like an architectural engineer to come in, or landscape architecture person to come in and show us how it should be filled, with regards to the floodplain and with regards to, if the stage is in the western northwest corner of that area, then how should we slope the land? How high can we make it go without upsetting Boulder City? So we wanted to do that, and we don't think it's gonna be that expensive. So we are also gonna be doing our budget in the next couple of meetings. So I would like to advocate that we put in enough money to fund that, so that then we're basically, everything's ready to go as far as design. And then it's a matter of then budgeting the work. So does that make sense?
Yep. Thank you.
But there are a couple people that are like, well, we've been talking about this for so many years. Why should we keep talking about it? Let's just do it. But we're not really at that point yet. I'm sorry. Because we don't really, every year we just put a little bit into it. We're not going all in.
Okay.
So that's why it's taken so long.
All right. Thanks. Any other questions on BOT reports?
With that, I want to thank everyone for their patience. So we got through our reports, and we want to move in. We got Aaron here, Maya and Julian, to talk to us about the community wildlife protection plan.
name's Maya. Thank you. I'm the director of the Boulder Watershed Collective, and we are here tonight to give you an update on the Nederland and a little bit of Timberline Fire Protection District's Community Wildfire Protection Plan, which has been in process for the past year.
Hold on just a second. I want to make sure that folks
Yeah.
online can hear you. Can somebody just let us know that they can hear the speaker?
Can you hear Maya?
I can, yeah.
Hand up.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We've had some issues in the past, so we want to make sure people could hear you.
Thanks for checking. Okay, so the Boulder Watershed Collective is a nonprofit. We work in the Boulder Creek watershed. And we have 3 program areas: watershed restoration, community engagement, and climate adaptation and resiliency. And wildfire preparedness, planning, mitigation basically crosses all of our program areas. And so we are working very closely with many communities right now to assist them in many different ways. It's different in every community with different fire districts to help them achieve the priorities that they want to. So I think we started talking with Nederland in 2022. We went through a couple grant rounds to try and get funding for a CWPP update. And we really started working on this in earnest, I think, at the beginning of 2023. So the role of Boulder Watershed Collective in this process has been pulling all the partners together, the different agencies and communities, and then really facilitating the process of getting all the funding, hiring the consultants, and facilitating the process. But what is in the plan is a collaboration from all of those agencies and many, many community members in the Nederland and Timberline Fire Protection Districts. So the CWPP is currently in a draft form. It's been out for public comment for the last few weeks. The public comment period closes tomorrow. And then we will finalize the plan, and it will need to be signed by Boulder County, State Forest Service, and then the plan is there. And it's really our intention to make sure that this plan does not sit on the shelf, that we are in the, that we're really trying to transition. And I say we collectively with many agencies are trying to transition right now from planning to implementation. So we're going to give you a high level overview of some of the components of the plan today, and then explain to you how we're transitioning into implementation. And just very quickly, we did receive a grant from Coalitions and Collaboratives to help with this process. It's the Action Implementation for Mitigation Grant. It is available for other mitigation work too, so that could be a good funding source in the future. And then the town of Nederland, Nederland Fire Protection District, Timberline Fire, and United Power all donated money as well for the consulting needs that we had. Oops.
All right. Again, my name is Erin Freed. And so what is a CWPP? So Community Wildfire Protection Plan. Some of you may be really, really familiar with it. And then some people, it might be pretty brand new to you, but I imagine most of you know a lot about it. But it's essentially just a planning process across local members, community members, stakeholders, and wildfire practitioners to reduce the risks and impacts of catastrophic wildfire. So this process includes modeled wildfire risk assessment, which has many, many different factors involved, including fire behavior, landscape features, community assessments of how well mitigated and home hardened areas are in these different pockets of Nederland and Timberline. And it also is a process that includes identification of environmental and community values. And that's where Boulder Watershed Collective led a lot of the implementation or the engagement. And I'll talk about that in just one sec. And then, as Maya mentioned, it ends up with a proposed set of action plans or priorities. And those are kind of interchangeable, but just know that these are project areas or proposed or potential plans. It's not a current projects. There are a few current projects in the prioritization, but most of them are proposed potential projects. And then those are the provided links for the full document that is created, and it's about 200 pages, give or take. And then we also created a more condensed story map version. And Julian will go over kind of overview of what's in that CWPP. So as Maya mentioned, this was across core team of wildfire practitioners and local residents that are part of Town of Nederland. But we also had Boulder County and City of Boulder representatives, Boulder Watershed Collective, Colorado State Forest Service representatives, Nederland Fire Protection District, Timberline Fire Protection District, and the Ember Alliance is the consulting firm that did all the wildfire modeling, as well as led facilitation of these monthly core team meetings. And Chief, do you want to talk about Nederland Fire Protection District's role in all of this? Oh, okay. Maybe after we're done. Okay, perfect. I'll keep going. So community input. We had an extensive 2022 process to have community engagement and input. We had 3 community visioning workshops. We worked with a graduate student team from CU Boulder, and this was across about 60 people attended, and it was asking, how do you envision specifically Nederland Fire Protection District being wildfire resilient and adapted? And so people did a visioning of what that future could look like. And so that actually created some really concrete action items for us to include in the CWPP. And we also, they also conducted 38 interviews, and that was around wildfire adaptation and similar concepts. And then in 2023, last year in July, we had a CWPP kickoff meeting, community event, and people asked really, really good, challenging questions that we needed to answer as a core team. And then we had 4 mapping community workshops and 1 digital survey, which was kind of a pilot. Those mapping workshops allowed people to map their personal values and wildfire resilient values that they had across the landscape. So that also created a list of very specific action items that people were proposing. I want to say that community input was integrated into the final prioritization, and that's very well documented in the Appendix D for the full document. I'm happy to answer questions about that integration later, but I'm not going to go into that detail. But again, happy to talk about how we integrated community input.
I am Julian with the Boulder Watershed Collective, and I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what's actually in the document and how you might end up using it going forwards. So the document is sort of broken down into these 4 sections. The first section is just an introduction. What is a CWPP? Sort of everything that Aaron covered. Why do you update a CWPP? And we usually go through these update processes because the landscape changes, demographics change, and we need up-to-date information to provide the best wildfire planning. So these CWPPs are going through like a 5-year cycle. And so this is a 5-year update. Well, it's 10 years now because the last one was 2011, but hopefully we'll have another update in 5 years. And that's the ideal to sort of get to this sort of 5-year timeline for updating. Then the next section goes into sort of the background of Nederland Timberline area. This is where a lot of the fire behavior modeling is. The Ember Alliance did all of those things, as Aaron was saying. And that basically talked about if wildfires were to start here, how would that impact the community in certain ways? And so you can sort of see maps in there describing that eventualities and what we would do in those situations and providing that information through maps that way. And then the third section is much more about fire adapted communities. This is what people can do on their homes and in their communities to prepare for fire. So this has a lot of information around home hardening, defensible space, and community connectedness, being, talking to your neighbors, making sure that you're in connection with your community, as that also helps prepare for wildfire. And then they're also included are the plan unit assessments. So as you can see from this map, the Nederland area sort of broke down into all of these plan units. And each plan unit has its own section that goes through what are the hazard level, the wildfire risk level, and what is the home hardening like, and what are the fire risks like in that specific area. And so it's broken down by plan unit in that section. And then finally, section 4 has recommendations for how to become better prepared for wildfire. These basically are organized under the National Cohesive Wildfire Strategy, which falls under fire adapted communities. How do we make our communities better adapted to fire? Safe and effective wildfire response. How do we respond to fire better? And resilient landscapes. How do we make our landscapes better able to receive fire? And that's just the organization for the recommendations. So, oh, it didn't. Okay. Yeah, something happened on the computer so that you guys aren't seeing the next slide. Yeah, that's not working. Yeah, someone else's computer. I don't quite know. Can you do that, Erin?
Yeah. Oh, it logged out of the internet.
Okay.
Yeah, we were warned this might happen. Give us 1 sec.
Doing that, I'll say that the next slide is describing. Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I could just keep going.
Well, I just wanted to say that we followed the way that things are planned on a national level for Nederland as well. So we divided it into those main planning areas, safe and effective fire response, which really has a lot to do with the fire districts and actual response to wildfires, fire adapted communities, which is probably the piece that the community was most concerned and invested in, was really looking at structure protection and preparedness, evacuations, alert systems, that type of thing. And then resilient landscapes is more like forestry and ecological restoration and stuff like that. So this follows a national way of looking at wildfire resilience in communities. And so now your plan also kind of mimics the way things are evaluated on a federal level.
No, that's good. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah. Getting close.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, there it is. So everything that Maya just said related to this slide, mimicking this strategy here. And so all of our recommendations are sort of broken down here. I just wanted to provide a couple of the top salient recommendations included there. But there's also a large spreadsheet list of many other recommendations prioritized into first level, second level, and third level priorities. These just rose to the top as sort of the top 5 things in each section. So in the fire adapted community section, there's communication and outreach specifically tailored to the community, just getting more community response in terms of what they want and how they want to be engaged. Increased fire ban signage, creating a community leader program. Oh, I think we just had the same problem, so we won't be able to go to the next slide. But creating a community leader program, there's a lot of interest from people in having this connectedness and building that community leader program. Town codes that require fuel treatments along public roadways, and expanded sort yard availability. Now, there are a lot more other recommendations, but these sort of, like I said, fall into the top 5. Safe and effective wildfire response is roadside mitigation on evacuation routes, improved ingress and egress routes, which I think everyone here has a taste of going to the Big Springs earlier. So yeah, so it's a big one on everyone's mind too. Increased joint trainings between local emergency response agencies, funding for Type 3 engine for NFPD, and to improve and diversify emergency communications. So during a wildfire event, making sure that there's many different ways that people can be contacted in the community so that they have access to those alert informations. And then finally, resilient landscapes, which sort of breaks down into 2 sections, a non-place-based section, which is how can we sort of do resilient, like the strategy for building resilient landscapes, and then place-based, which are specific plots of land and what are we going to do on those plots of land. So the non-place-based are these 4 cross-boundary forest management, making sure that we're doing forest management on plots that are not just single ownership, and so we can sort of tailor to the landscape rather than just doing plots based on ownership. This allows for better forest management in general. Planning fuel treatments with the goal of restoring natural fire regimes. So really the goal is to learn to live with fire into the future, not to eradicate fire, since that is actually a big part of what's causing a lot of fire challenges now. So just making sure that we have prescribed burns and are allowing natural fire to burn safely in the area. The community leader program came up again, but that was actually a typo. So not that one again, but post-fire recovery plans specific to NED. So making sure that there's also recovery plans for after a wildfire affects the community. And then I guess since we don't have the slides, I don't know if you guys are following along on other slides. You are, okay, yeah. So the next slide is about the place-based resilient landscape recommendations. This is just sort of an image of a map of what one project site would look like. This is specifically Forsyth, which is under this would be like recommendations for this project. And so the Forsyth project is basically just talking about management long-term with just broadcast burns. So just keeping up broadcast burning in that area. It's not recommending new treatments. It's just sort of talking about what's already happening and deciding to increase management into the future or to continue doing that. But then we have other project recommendations, and a few of them are the Middle Magnolia, the Pine Cliff area, and Tucker Ranch, and you can read more about those specific projects. Not all of these are very fleshed out. A lot of them are just sort of like priority areas, like we know this is a spot where we want something done, but we haven't gone in to figure out what is the best way to do it. And that all is still open for discussion as it moves forward. And then I want to pass it back off to Maya to talk a little bit more about how the CWPP is being implemented.
Yeah, so this is really the exciting part, is not putting the plan on the shelf and actually just starting to implement the work. And there actually is a lot of work that is starting in many different areas that were recommended by the community or by the agency partners. So Wildfire Partners, Boulder County Wildfire Partners and Boulder Watershed Collective are currently working in Old Town to try to help landowners start looking at, understanding what types of needs they have around their structures, and then trying to help facilitate some of those changes that they need on their house. And so that is kind of an experiment also. You know, a lot of these areas have older construction, and it is very difficult to transition a home from older construction to fire resilient, but little by little is what we're looking at here. And then emergency preparedness. So the town had in their strategic plan last year to do some emergency preparedness work. And we've been working with Troy to put together some mailers that will go out to every resident in the town of Nederland with a variety of different resources, from tax incentives for doing their own mitigation work, resources to help people with mitigation work like Wildfire Partners, but other things as well, information on preparedness, and a variety of other things, which I can't remember right now, but we've tried to compile a lot of different resources into a very accessible document where everyone can just kind of have a couple pages where they can do what's ready, what they're ready for at that time. So this is in addition to the CWPP, a little bit more bite-sized and manageable.
Yeah, that was the 10,000 that we had squared away. When is that going out?
I think it should go out soon because Troy and others have had a chance to review it. So it should be in the next month for sure.
Troy is online, but I think we are planning on like immediate future.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That was one of the questions I forgot to ask during our staff reports. So fantastic.
Yeah. And then also ProSab is working on the Moose Meadows area and doing some mitigation in that area. And we're trying to integrate a little bit of education, since a lot of community members will be gathered there as well. We're trying to incorporate some education into that area. One of the things that we noticed with the last fires, and especially the one at Gross Reservoir, was that there was some confusion about evacuations and pre-evacuations. And so the Office of Disaster Management is going to come up to that event and be able to talk with people there. So we're just really trying to be responsive to the things that the community asked for in terms of tailored community engagement for this area. Additionally, we are continuing to work on forestry at Arapahoe Ranch.
almost done with that 28 acres there. And then Boulder County has received funding to work on their Tucker property, which is just west of town. So they haven't received the funding yet, but they've been awarded the funding. So they're going to start planning for forestry at the Tucker property. And that process will include a lot of community engagement and planning and opportunities for the community to be really informed and give input on as the plans develop for that. I'm not really sure what the timeline for that is yet. And then a couple of other things that are a little bit different than pre-fire mitigation. Boulder Watershed Collective is working with the Watershed Center, another watershed group that works in the same vein, on wildfire ready watersheds, which is pre-planning for post-wildfire impacts. So it's very focused on river systems and protecting water infrastructure. We had the opportunity to walk with Andrew and our consultant around the intake area and the water treatment plant, so we can really try to look at the vulnerabilities and challenges and needs of the water system for Nederland, and really use that grant and that planning to set up the needs of the town of Nederland and other areas for future projects and grant funding in the future. And then we are also looking at, one thing that came up in some of the community engagement was really people interested in ecological restoration that expanded beyond forestry. And so Boulder Watershed Collective does have a program where we're looking at meadow restoration, wetland and riparian restoration, and which includes beaver reintroduction in some areas. And this is just really a way to try to build wetted areas that can be wildlife refuges during a wildfire, and it also helps recovery after a wildfire. It helps sediment attenuation to protect water sources. So we're really trying to have this holistic view of how to create wildfire resilience for your community, for all of our community. And in addition to all of this stuff, oh, and we got a grant for clean air stuff too. So we will be purchasing some HEPA filters that could create a clean air space in this building, if as your shelter, or if there's another area like the library or something that you would prefer to be like the clean air space on those really, really smoky days, for people who have respiratory issues or something. That's in the process too. And then Nederland Fire is also already starting to transition into implementation. So I'm going to hand it over to them, but thank you so much for the opportunity to work with your town, and there were many different departments that contributed to this. And so it was really great to have all of those perspectives.
Thanks, Maya.
Thank you.
Maya. Thanks, Aaron.
Well, I don't want to steal too much thunder away from all the folks who did all the real heavy lifting. But we really worked closely with the Boulder Watershed Collective, Ember Alliance, and the rest of the agencies that they put up on the board there. But real quick, we talked with them about our operational goals, our strengths, what our needs were, kind of what each of the subdivisions look like, what some of the concerns that we have for that, for those areas. My time up. We looked pretty closely at some of the hazard areas that we have around and inside the town of Nederland. We also discussed water supplies, some of the concerns and some of the strengths that we also have in the area. We've worked pretty hard in the last few years with our fire marshal and code compliance and some code changes. I think we need to start looking at some code change, right? That's where we're some code update in the next year. Yeah. So that would be something that we want to look at in the future. And then just kind of, some of the things that the locals can really act on right now. And so some of the clearing close to the house, home hardening, all the things that they've already discussed. Really, I think we brought me up here for questions, but if anybody has any questions for the fire department, I'm happy to answer them.
I have a question just comes out of people, that I know are concerned with wildfire partners coming onto their property and knowing what it's about and whether they don't have the means or motivation to make the changes, but the insurance company finds out about it and all of a sudden they find themselves without insurance. So that's a great fear. I will let you know.
Yeah, and
many people have in this town.
I can tell you
So
that
so
I'm
they stay.
personally going through it. myself. And so most people know that I lost my home in the 2016 Cold Springs fire. So we don't have a lot of trees and we're still struggling getting decent fire insurance. And so we're working pretty hard. The fire marshal is constantly going out to people's houses, making sure that their residences are, you know, compliant, or he has to write a letter to the insurance company after the homeowner has done, you know, certain checklists and things like that. And so it is something that we're looking at pretty closely, working really hard at. But the insurance thing is a real struggle. And I think it's something that the state is going to have to look at. Yeah.
So, yes, I completely empathize with the insurance question. We have asked wildfire partners explicitly, would this be, if you do any mitigation work or home assessments or anything in the area, would that be reported to any insurance? And they said, absolutely not. They're very, very careful with who they share that information with. In fact, they could not even share it with us. So they're very, very, very careful with who they share that with. On the other side, they are partnering with insurance companies, not on particular projects necessarily, but trying to understand how wildfire home assessments and mitigation strategies, home hardening and defensible space could actually lower someone's insurance. So they're trying to do the other end of it, which is trying to lower it. So they're not going to be reporting this to insurance companies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Back in here. You did talk a little bit about Wildfire Partners, and Wildfire Partners is a really great, do we call them an agency now? Right. Group within Boulder County. And so, you know, they will go out to people's houses. They will do the inspections for them. But the great thing is that they will also help you get grants and help you work with those certain grants to get, it might even be just a $500 grant, but it might help you get that 3 to 5 foot clearing around your house. And that's one thing that I don't think enough of our residents are taking advantage of. So that would definitely be something that I'd really speak highly of and recommend that our citizens do that. Thanks.
Thanks. More questions for these folks? This agency? If there aren't, are there more questions? Tanya, do you have any questions for these guys?
No, I like the report. And I like the advice about clearing the trees along the roadways, but town owns those roadways for the most part. So that would fall onto our shoulders. So I think that means that town needs to start looking at funding for clearing off our right of way.
Yeah, that one's come up in public comment a few times.
Sounds like a 2025 focus potentially for a strategic plan.
Well, and if it's on a highway, it's CDOT, right? It wouldn't be us.
Right. It's just more like town, like, you know.
Well, that's true. Like along the highway, towards Boulder, that's City of Boulder and also CDOT, and that's really bad where it's like half dead trees. But yeah, but how do you prioritize that? Like, how do you enforce that for another entity? We can tell in our town code that residents have to clear trees off the roadway, and most of the time it's going to be in our right of way. But how, I mean, I know this is a plan that's supposed to encompass all municipalities, but like, has Boulder City read this? Are they on board with that kind of thing too, or?
Yes, City of Boulder was part of the planning team. It doesn't mean that every agency is ready to do every project area, and, you know, just because of limited capacity, people are aligning with certain projects, but the roadways are complicated because there are so many different ownerships and you want a linear, you know, certain linear feature to be effective. And so I think that those projects, Tanya, are going to take a lot of collaboration amongst agencies to really determine the priority areas that they want to work on. And then there is a lot of grant funding, though, available for that type of work right now. So where those priority areas are identified, there definitely is the possibility of doing some good work that spans municipalities, I think.
Nikki identified one. We're going to bring a request to put an application in for such a program between Nikki and Andrew that would do some stuff at the water plant and also some mitigation work, and that will be coming to the BOT in the near future.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We
Awesome. Thank
appreciate
you
your
guys.
time.
I think it's a great report. I appreciate the work.
The detail.
Yeah.
It'll take us a minute to get through it.
Oh, I know. It'll take forever.
I also want to add, what you said, like, you don't want this put on the shelf, like so many other reports that get brought here. So, how can we keep it from just staying on the shelf? What would be the most actionable items that our town could do in the next year, in your opinion?
That is a very good question. It seems like when, just in my very recent experience with the town and just working on the mailer, if it was in your strategic plan, it seems like that's a way to carry that forward. And so I think that if the town wanted to look through the recommended projects in there and maybe whittle those down to the top couple that feel achievable to you, maybe that would be a good place to start, thinking about working with partners, whether that's the fire district. Oh, yeah. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
We can also talk to our comprehensive planning group and see if there's some of these recommendations we can add into that plan.
Like it.
Yes.
Noted.
Well, thanks, Maya. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Julian. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Charlie. Appreciate you being here for this. Welcome to stay for more. Or you are welcome.
Green stay.
Thank you all. With that, we're going to go to
Bring us some beavers.
an update. Our second informational item about the LPC grant housing coordinator. And Jonathan will give us an update.
This is a pretty minimal one. We received the LPC grant from the Division of Housing to get a housing coordinator in combination with Lions. And so we just got the final version of the contract back today that is ready to be executed. So that's been sent to Lions to review. And I think what we're trying to do is complete that work, get the job description done, and figure out all the benefits and things like that so we can get this person hired and onboarded soon. Britt, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add to that, but I think we're pretty close to the finish line here on getting somebody on board.
I have nothing to add, just excited to have someone.
Sounds good. Any concerns from the board? Any questions?
I just have one quick question.
How does he do that?
It's magic.
for it.
Jonathan, you mentioned something about that. Maybe maybe I shouldn't be speaking about that here, but I am. The sustainability coordinator, that kind of role could be potentially split between Lions and Netherlands as well.
Yeah, our sustainability coordinator recently resigned, and so we're in the process of hiring a new person right now. And Lions is interested in the same work. Ours is grant funded.
Hold on, I just want to back up. Leah resigned?
Yes.
Got it.
She needs a little bit more time to take care of her family responsibilities is what she did, but she's going to stay involved in the town. So I think we'll have her around, but we are in the process of hiring a new sustainability coordinator. And one of the questions that always comes up about this is it's grant funded. So how do we make sure that we have that position continue in the future? And one of the things we're going to do is have this person is going to start reporting to Britt, and they'll kind of help with some of the planning processes that go into the sustainability piece so we can start recovering those fees that we should recover and kind of doing that work. But Lions also has the same need as us, and so there may be a potential to share this position as well. And if we establish this housing coordinator to be a really good kind of partnership between the two towns, I think this would be another fit for that same kind of work. So that's kind of what we were exploring, is that an option for as we move into the future and that grant funding dries up.
Cool. All right, Billy, I'm going to move on. Oh, there he is.
All right, so I believe we are on to our first action item, which is Planning Commission appointments. So is that you, Britt?
That's me. So summary,
Somebody's at the door. Can somebody let somebody in?
um,
That's our doorbell.
the Planning Commission is an appointed board which reviews developments and land use codes specific to PC's purview in land use and zoning. Board members must be legal residents of the town of Nederland and serve a 4-year term. In June 2024, Stephanie Herring resigned from the PC. Town received 2 applications by the due date of August 12th, 2024. All applicants are Nederland residents. The first applicant is Sunny, how do you say your last name? Kircher. And the second applicant is Tom Hole. The questions before the board today is which applicants does the Board of Trustees want to see appoint to fulfill or fill the Planning Commission's vacancy, term ending June 1st, 2027. Their applications are attached and both individuals are here if you have questions.
Cool. So probably what we'll do, not probably, what we'll do is we'll have each of you come up and talk and kind of give your just talk to us about why you want to be on the planning commission and your experience, what you bring to planning commission, what you would bring into this role. And then we'll probably ask specific questions, and then each of you will have time to talk. We ask each of you specific questions, and we may have you come up a second time as well. And so with that, probably we'll go with Sunny first, just because your name's first.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I didn't think that I would be speaking, actually, so nothing rehearsed. Been living in Nederland for the past 3 years and love this community. I studied urban planning and environmental policy in school 15 years ago, and I think that public engagement is really important, and also how we look into the future and plan communities from a people perspective, from the environment and all the economy and other elements. And yeah, here for questions.
Any questions?
I'm just putting it together in my head.
I do. How does your present work, like the work you do, your day job, how does that inform this kind of a role for the town, do you think?
Great question. My day job, I work for a soil biology company. We provide insights in sustainable agriculture. So I work a lot in the Midwest, actually. So very far from here, but I think it's really relevant because we all eat and believe in, healthy communities is really important. So I very much have a global role in my work and want to be more involved in local town politics. So that's my day job. I work from home. Sometimes I work at Hub Ned. Sometimes I go down to Boulder to meet coworkers. So I'm physically here a lot.
More questions?
Essentially, that's what I was going to ask. So thank you.
Yeah.
What are you hoping to bring to the Planning Commission? Are you familiar with sort of the ins and outs of the meetings or anything like that? And then what do you hope to bring to it?
I'm not super familiar with the ins and outs of the meetings. What I'd like to bring is a young perspective to the town. I've spent a lot of time reviewing different documents and tuning into these meetings remotely. And, there's my age is a part of it, but also wanting to present renters, owners, and also the different agencies in the area, and make good decisions and support you all in interpreting documents and probably taking some of the load off of the time commitment it takes to go through the many things that come across your desk. And, you know, in my role and my current job and past experience, I've spent a lot of time doing research, looking at sustainable community developments and budgeting, summarizing, and, you know, bringing those skills into our community.
Got it. It's interesting that you bring up as a diverse perspective, your, you know, youth, right? That is potentially something that is not right now represented on the board. So.
Is there anything in particular that kind of sticks out to you that's kind of some of the driving force for you joining?
I mean, I'm not coming in with a huge agenda. I've read a lot about the potential development of Arapahoe Ranch and like the Aspen Meadows and, you know, the trying to balance potential annexation for the town versus infill. And I think affordable housing is really important, and, you know, providing a stable workforce for all of the businesses in town. Yeah, like I said, I don't have like a particular agenda there. I've lived in other ski towns and mountain towns where there's been just a huge issue with providing a local workforce. So that is something that's very close to home to me for what a healthy community is. You know, having like young families and also older people that are comfortable and have places to connect, and, you know, intergenerational connection, I think, is really important.
Cool. Good answer. Thank you.
Have you ever served on any boards or commissions or, you know, been involved with any groups like this before?
No, I've not. I've volunteered a lot, and in more like permanent kind of roles, not just like pop up for a day kind of volunteering, but not like in a public office.
Which is okay, because many folks, even on this board, this is their first time. So
I have, I did some grant writing for a land institution, helping support conservation easements. So that's kind of the closest I've gotten in terms of like planning and working with public-private kind of partnerships.
You guys covered all the bases.
Any questions for Sunny?
I have a question.
Go for it.
This is Tanya. I'm online. I want to thank you for offering up your time and energy for this position. It's a 4-year position. You lived in town 3 years. Do you feel committed, like, to this community, to submit yourself to a 4-year position?
Yeah, I do. I love it here and have slowly integrated in the community in different ways and with my neighbors. And yeah, I want to be a part of the future of Nederland, and I'm ready for
Great,
4
sounds
years.
good. Thank you.
Thank you.
just to clarify, it's kind of a 3-year-ish term, right? Okay.
Oh, because we're finishing.
Yeah,
it.
we're finishing
That's-
hearings.
Why is
just-
that?
Oh, because Stephanie
Oh,
Stephanie moved out of town.
I'd read that it was 4 years.
Yeah, it is a 4-year term. You're correct. We're just over a year into it.
This term ends June 1st.
This is what the AIM had said,
2027.
so I don't know.
Yeah.
More
Okay, so
questions?
just
for-
under, yeah, okay.
Questions? Chris, you got any questions? Sunny? Okay.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
your consideration.
Yeah. Sit tight. We may or may not call you guys back up, both that back up here. Tom's gonna talk to us now. Thanks, Sonny. Led by our one-armed bandit. Okay. Tom?
Tom Mahold. A lot of things bring me back because I've served on this board before for a couple of years. But the first thing I did was go to Roger Cornell University for 4 consecutive Saturdays, 2 to review chapter 16, 2 to review chapter 18, with annotations and backstories on what happened with each decision over the years in those chapters and what the result was and whether it was boneheaded or a good decision. So I owe a lot to Roger Cornell for getting me up to speed. When I came onto that board, I didn't know a whole lot about it other than having built a house here in Nederland. Building a residential house was, especially during COVID, was the challenge. But we're just completing the first commercial property in Nederland in a long time at the Nederland Food Pantry. That's been interesting. And then I've got three homes in Nederland, 2 are rentals that we just went through the Wildfire Partners program and got passes on all 3. So I'm, the CWPP is something I've been following really closely because anybody that's been here long enough has seen the smoke coming over the hill, and you get the whiff and you know what's coming. And there are things we can do on the preservation front to build resilience into our housing. We're putting some of that into the food pantry right now. But there are, I guess the question was, why do I want to do this? It's a pivotal time. I worked a lot on the housing study, both here and Dr. Cog down in Denver, in the process of working on that. I testified to the legislature in 22 and 23 on housing issues from a mountain perspective. And those of you, well, you've probably seen the housing study that Dr. Cog has done. It's got a huge swath of land called the Nederland Zone because we got our housing study done first. We've got a lot of legacy properties, including the Meyerton's property that, once in a lifetime properties that are available for development. But so we got more moving parts than we've had before. I think in the housing study, and then when we did the housing study, it was clear we needed to come up with more housing types. And so we tuned our zoning, we tuned our what can go into each zone. I think that work is somewhat incomplete. We got more work to do there. So I think we're at a place with the Planning Commission where we've got some green members. I can't add much diversity. I hear you on that one. But I think I kind of can come in, understand what needs to be done, understand what we're talking about. The work we did on developing the housing plan is so fresh at this point. It really is time to implement. So I offer my candidacy. We'll see where this goes. But it's been both chapters, on the residential side and on the commercial side, have been interesting. And having put the stuff together, now I understand. When the chief says we're going to need to look at revisions to our code going forward for resilience, I understand completely, having had to make those decisions myself. So that's it.
Questions for Tom?
Yeah, so I'll ask you the same question that I asked Sunny is, what are you going to be able to contribute to the PC?
First of all, the PC is a once a month meeting, as opposed to what we do here. And I think we really did put the pedal to the metal at the end of last year on the Planning Commission to get stuff done in December. And so I think we did 8 action items in the last meeting. But I talked with Steve Williams about this morning, where we're at right now, what are the priorities for the board going forward. So I think we're in alignment there. But in terms of time commitment, I would say there's a flurry the week before a meeting, the third Wednesday of each month. But then there's a lot of background work, especially as we go through the types of things that you've been working on, taking a look at our town-owned land, coming up or talking with people that want to build here, and helping find out where the impediments are. And then, we're making policy. We're not, anything that I think we've gotten people used to the fact that you shouldn't rely on the BZA as your court of appeal. if you can't build reasonably within limits, I think it usually you take care of that pretty quickly. So I would take my lead from one of the guys that's standing behind me, who's vice chair, and from Steve Williams and others on the board. I've been out for a little bit, so I'll take my priority cues from them.
Thanks. More questions for Tom?
Tom, do you have like I asked Sunny, do you have a particular project that's driving you to be on the board?
No particular project other than fulfilling that. The most immediate thing is fulfilling our commitment to affordables. Building the 13 affordables, I think, is well within our reach, and it's shame on us if we don't execute on it.
Permitting, correct?
Beg your
We have to permit,
Permitting.
we have to permit them by
Correct.
the deadline, but they don't have to necessarily be built, but as long as
Mhm.
they're permitted. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't think we're much closer now than we were then. I think other than we're identified in land, which is a great place to start.
More questions for Tom?
Tom, your application, mentions the boards and commissions that you've sat on before, but since I asked Sunny too, is there anything you want to elaborate on?
No, I think on the Board of Trustees, I think the work we did on the housing study was exceptional, and best of all, it was first. And that's why Nederland why we were asked to talk at Dr. Cog level about the needs of mountain housing and why other communities are looking our way. And that's probably why we're looking at a multi-jurisdictional housing authority, because we jumped early and we're adapting pretty quickly to do what we need to do to get these units permitted and built.
Connie, you have any questions for Tom?
Yeah, I'll ask him the same one I asked Sunny. Do you feel like you can commit to a 4-year term? But it looks like it's only 3
3.5.
years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I can.
Thanks, Tom.
Good.
We may very well bring you both back up for a bit. With that, we will go to public comments. And we'll go public comment, 3 minutes on the Planning Commission appointment.
Good evening, BOT members. I hope everyone's feeling good after our little nature walk today. It was very enlightening. And those of you that couldn't make it, I encourage you to try and be on the next one. My name is Jim Reese. I live at 66 Barker Road, Nederland, Colorado. I am the vice chair of the Planning Commission. I'm here to talk and support, to throw my support behind Tom Mahold and ask that you consider appointing him as our vacant member for the Planning Commission. I also have a letter to read here at the request of Steve Williams, the chairman. He says, to the BOT, this is a letter of support for Tom Mahold's application to the Nederland Planning Commission vacancy. I have known Tom for many years, first as mayor pro tem and then as the BOT liaison to the PC. During that time, I have found him very dedicated to the town of Nederland in all his volunteer work, including strong collaboration and committee work with Colorado Municipal League, as well as the Denver Regional Council of Governments, Dr. Cog. I have enjoyed working with him, and at town meetings, I have found him to come to our meetings very well prepared, organized, and knowledgeable about the issues to be discussed. Plus, I was always impressed with his grasp of the Nederland municipal code. He's currently out of town on a family reunion, but I also agree that this is a unique opportunity to appoint somebody to the Planning Commission who might have more knowledge than most of us on the Planning Commission because of his intricate past here with the BOT and being vice mayor. He knows what the town initiatives are. He's been involved with us with the housing study and the collaborative work groups. So I really encourage Sunny, and I hope that if she's not selected, that she seeks out another opportunity to serve on one of the many, many boards that we have in our town. There's lots of opportunities, but we have had some turnover in the past couple of years at the Planning Commission, and it is kind of tough to have somebody come in who doesn't really know the code as it is currently and the current initiatives. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it would be a great help to us as a planning commission to have Tom on there. His amount of research and time that he's willing to put in is far more than mine. So I would love to have him on. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Steve. Any more public comment, or is there any public comment? Folks in the room first on our planning commission appointments? No one in the room? Anyone online have a public comment regarding our planning commission appointment? Doesn't look like it. No. Okay, thanks, Macy. So with that, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion.
I make a motion to appoint Tom Hall to the open planning commission seat.
I second.
It's our usual horrible decision where we have two great candidates against one of them.
Yeah, I just wanted to open it up for discussion as well.
And thank you, Mayor Billy. And I think, you know, it is tough when there's two good candidates. I think, and every decision that we make is always contextual. It's always this point in time and what we think can help the boards. And I think that having that experience is going to behoove and help the planning commission this time around. So that's primarily the reason why I'm choosing the way I am.
Ditto.
Others?
Nicole, you're on the planning commission right now, right?
I am.
The liaison.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's pretty telling if this is your recommendation not to. Again, Sunny is a great candidate, and it is tough,
Yes.
and we're lucky to have her.
Yes, and I appreciate the perspective of a youthful perspective to bring to that.
Yeah, same.
And you know, I'd have to wait before I make any projections about the next vacancy that'll happen. But I hope, Sunny, that if this motion goes through, that you'll come back around and/or learn from this guy, Tom. He is a plethora of information.
Yeah, there are a few who are more dedicated to the task.
I agree with that. I mean, Tom, you definitely have shown you put a lot of time into the town and you're willing to put a lot of time into the town's needs. And as the only older white dude on the trustees right now, I think we got a pretty good amount of older dudes on the planning commission already. And I lean towards a fresher, younger outlook for the planning commission. That's kind of what I feel like it needs. Right now is kind of a younger perspective coming in. And I know that I know that Sunny hasn't been on a town board, but I do, when I read the letters you gave and the training you have, the work you do, and just hearing you both talk, I feel like Sunny does bring a lot to the table as a younger person, as a woman. So I lean towards Sunny. I think for the sake of that kind of diverse element, which the planning commission, I think, also needs more of.
Well, we do have a motion on the table. Should we vote?
Yeah, we're discussing. Is there any more discussion?
I was gonna say, as the other haired white guy, old white guy on the board, I actually agree with you. I think, we've had a really good opportunity in the years with both the planning commission and the BOT to keep a lot of balance, in terms of gender identity, age, ownership versus rentership. And I think unfortunately, Stephanie Herring did an incredible job for 5 years. She was on there for a while, full term, and then a bit of a second one. And so, Tom, you're my neighbor. I appreciate all you've done. And I think, if we had two openings, this would be easy. But I also kind of agree with Billy that replacing Stephanie with someone who represents a younger female point of view, I think is a plus in my mind.
Yeah, that point about replacing Stephanie, with another woman
Well, I
and a
don't want to
younger
imply
person.
we can replace Stephanie
Right.
at all, but
That's a good point.
Just also as context, we did add Elizabeth Pensioner to
Yeah.
the board. That was our last appointment, bringing in a fresh perspective, a woman researcher, replacing, because she replaced who was that?
Chris Rivera.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
Chris
because he
Rivera.
moved.
So we are still aiming for that balance for sure.
Yeah, and I think given the support from the current planning commission members, and the current need for our housing program, it makes, a strong case, not against diversity in any way, shape or form. But I just think we're at a pivotal moment right now in that, and it's a rare opportunity to take advantage of what Tom is offering.
I agree. To be clear, two planning commissioners made a recommendation, not
Not the
commission
entire.
itself.
And I
understand.
I want to be clear on that too, because, Jim wanted someone else for his liaison, Mr. Larson over there. And I think I'm doing okay for you right? I'm doing okay for you on the planning. There we go. All right. Yeah. So as much as it's a couple of people who have made the recommendation, and we oftentimes want, the folks who we're familiar with and who we have experience with, that's what we are often geared toward. I take the recommendation of two and not the entire board. It's different when the NDDA came before us and said, here's all 8 of our votes. This is different.
I think we should clarify too, the planning commission doesn't see the applications before that. These individuals just knew this
Exactly.
person. I just wanted to make that clear.
Yep.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's good to know. Thank you.
Well, this is Tanya. I just want to speak towards Tom's plethora of experience and with all the boards, with the knowledge of the code, knowledge of the other board members, and the projects on the horizon, projects in the past. I think I think it's strange to just go with somebody just because she's a young woman, who seems like who has a lot of energy, which is great. But I think at this point, that to me, that's insane. We have somebody who's got the experience to tackle all of this, recommended by 2 people who are seniors on the board, plus Nicole. To me, it's a no-brainer.
Okay.
So
More discussion?
Just to argue against that and bringing in a young perspective, sometimes that diverse work, like that lived experience, is worth. But I think that's what we're debating, right? It's like,
No,
is it
I
the
understand.
experience?
I just don't.
Sure, I
If
get
we're
what
going
you're
to use
saying.
this
I get
criteria,
it.
yeah, it's just
I just wanted to
it shouldn't be the
clarify.
criteria.
Yeah, because sometimes I will make a decision for lived experience, especially when it balances out, and that's exactly what going with Elizabeth was for me last time.
At the same time, how do you get lived experience if you can't experience it? Like, if you can't be put in that position to experience that and gain that experience to move forward in life.
Lived experience means a little bit of a different context here, in that her lived experience is different from your lived experience.
Sure.
And how do we make sure that that is represented around the board? Coming to the point, I'm not talking about the experience of PC.
Okay. And speaking to sort of the qualifications, Stephanie does have, in her application, I think you mentioned it as well, degrees in urban planning and environmental policy. Both things that are, critical needs and are going to drive a lot of the policy decisions in the affordable housing sphere and other projects that we're tackling as a town. So she would bring a great deal to the planning commission that potentially doesn't exist on the commission as it is.
Urban planning 15 years ago, is that correct? Yeah, 15 years ago. This was also part of the criteria in the background of Sam, who had applied. And, we can argue both sides that, sure, it's great to have. And at the same time, that different perspective also brings in fresh eyes. So we can argue it either way, I think.
I think this is not an easy choice. We have 2 very qualified candidates, and I appreciate you both for applying, and I'll repeat what everybody else said. So I do think that it is a tough decision because you both bring very different things to the board. But I hear Steve and Jim. I know that Tom has this immense experience. I'm leaning towards Tom at this point based on not only the recommendations, but the particular board makeup too that I'm hearing. If there are also other green members, I understand that there's a potential need to kind of help everyone else get up to speed too, which I think Tom can help do. With that said, not to discount the benefits of diversity and having a new perspective, fresh perspective on the board. And I hope whoever is not appointed definitely comes back and applies again.
No, the one thing I would request of whoever, is appointed that when you have an opinion of how something should go, like when you come into planning commission, there's an action item, discussion item. It's going to be very important and just to be, there's more time to have a process in the planning commission meetings. They are more, process oriented. And so sometimes the BOT can be much more hurry and just let's be effective and let's be efficient and let's be quick and just say what we're thinking. But I think it's going to be important for the public that people know why you're thinking what you're thinking and why you're voting the way you vote before you vote or as you're explaining your vote versus just voting and no one really knows what your thought process is, because oftentimes we do come with a preconceived opinion of something, not always, but sometimes, but it's always good to talk through our process, whether we've made up our, whether we've really come with our mind made up or not. So whoever goes into any boards for that matter, please talk your process out loud so people know what you're thinking, so people know why you vote what you vote. Is there any more discussion? Okay, Macy. So actually, the motion is to appoint Tom Mahold to the PC, just to make sure we know we're voting on.
Trustee
And there's a second.
made a motion. It was seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Sterling. All right, Trustee Miller,
Yes.
Trustee Ty,
No.
Trustee Larson,
No.
Mayor Billy,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling,
Yes.
Trustee Maris,
Yes.
and Trustee Corvalon.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The motion has
Motion.
been approved.
The motion is approved. Tom, you'll be being on the PC, and Tom himself told me a while ago that there may be someone else leaving PC. You never know over the next, year or so. So pay attention to, these postings.
Yeah, and so you'd be up because we got enough old white guys, okay?
Yeah, the old white guy quota, now we're at 4, so.
We also have a lot of vacancies right now on other boards. If you're interested, we email you as well.
Cool.
Thank you, Sunny.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Sunny. Appreciate it. And with that, we will move into our first discussion item of the evening, which I do believe is Teens Inc. And John, do you want to get us started?
Sure. So, Mayor and trustees, as you know, the referendum that was recently held about whether or not Teens Inc. was should be allowed to be on the Old Town lot was passed, and that was in late July. Since that time, the town has vacated right away near that lot, and we're in a process right now where we need to consolidate those two lots together. So that's kind of the first step in looking at a lease with Teens Inc. We need to get that done so that we can get a legal description for the lease itself. That requires a final plat and a survey. And so as we've been kind of talking to Teens Inc. about conditions of the lease, we're also talking about making sure that we get all this work done in an appropriate timeline. And we have several questions about the lease that we wanted to ask the board, and that ultimately there's an opportunity for discussion with Teens Inc. about, so that we can be finalizing terms for that lease as we kind of work on that survey. I want to give you kind of a quick rundown of what our questions for you are, and then Teens Inc. has representatives here to talk as well. Some of the questions that have come up are, in terms of the final plat that's required for that lot consolidation, that requires a survey. And we want to know if the board would like the town to pay for that survey or if Teens Inc. should pay for that survey. Another question that has come up over the process of this lease discussion is terms of approval for the building permits. Teens Inc. has asked for an abbreviated period that the town staff thinks might be a little bit tight. I think it's 15 days in the lease. We'd like to make sure that this process, when we get to that point, is expedited in review, but that we're actually going through all the review processes that we have. Another question that has come up is building permit fees and PIF fees. We want to determine whether or not the town should pay for the building permit fees and PIF fees, or if Teens Inc. should be responsible for those fees or some portion thereof. And then the final question that we have regarding this lease is the term and compensation to the town for that lease. What's been discussed publicly is a 99-year lease at $1 a year. And we are asking for direction if the board thinks that that is an appropriate term and compensation level for that lease. So as I noted, Teens Inc. is here. They can come and speak to you about kind of what they're thinking. One other thing I wanted to throw in here is we have been talking to Teens Inc. after the election. We saw significant public engagement about some of the things that go into this. Teens Inc. has agreed that we could create what's called a memorandum of understanding, which is kind of a documentation of intent that Nederland kids have first priority at the school. And there's a couple of ways we can do that. We haven't quite worked that document out, but I did want to mention that as they come up, that they've been listening to this public discourse that we've had in the community over the last few months, and they've been really working to make sure that we're kind of meeting the needs of the community with this project. So with that, I'd bring it back to the board for questions for me or questions for teens.
Any clarifying questions for John at the moment? And then Stephen, I'm guessing will come up pretty soon. So. Or for John. Tanya, any clarifying questions for John? Just get started.
The MOU, is that part of the lease agreement or is it a separate document? Does it have to be created at the same time?
No, ma'am, but I think we try to, if that is a direction we all want to go, we try to finalize that so you could consider it at the same time. So it shows the intent of Teens Inc. and the town to make sure that Nederland kids have that priority.
But it is a separate
Yeah,
document.
Correct.
Which could be amended
Thank
later.
you for that.
Right? It's kind of the key of that.
Yes.
Thanks, Tanya.
Says a completion construction by December 31st, 2027. Is there any like extensions that are allowed with that?
I think our current lease allows 2, and that's something that I'd like to hear more from Teens Inc. on if that's that meets their deadline and goals. But I think that we ultimately, you have some negotiating power on that as well.
The lease, if the lease is approved, finalized, at some point that works for everybody, what is the process of amending the lease? Something that's viable, or does it just make more sense to use the MOU?
I think in terms of like giving preference to Nederland kids and things like that, having an MOU document for that purpose that is separate from the lease is probably more appropriate. It helps us document our intent better. And then if future generations of, when the kids are negotiating their own lease for their own kids, that's something, or, whatever, they could work with that with Teens Inc. at that time. The lease is always subject to negotiation if both parties want to do that. Does that answer your question? Or
Yeah, and also just like what goes, you talked about the building permit timelines.
Oh,
like, is
I'm
that
sorry.
something that would go in makes more sense to put in the MOU?
I
Because
think
those are sort of one-time events that's, this is going to happen during construction. It's not necessarily part of the ongoing operating lease situation.
Attorney Madsen is on too, and so she might have an opinion different than mine. I think we could come up with a statement on review that's something to the effect of the town agrees to expedite review to the maximum extent possible, and it will require engineering review and building permit review. I believe that Britt and I can do the planning review of this very quickly. So our piece of it isn't that extensive, but we have outside groups that have other workloads that we just need to take into account.
Yeah.
And so we'll probably know a little bit better when we get closer to where their civil documents are ready and everything, where we can talk to Safe Built and JVA, our engineering firms, just to make sure that we can get those through on a timeline. On general timeline for the project, we think that if we can get a survey started very soon, we can get to Planning Commission on the 25th. The review for this goes to me and Planning Commission. It's an administrative review. So it's my job to make sure that that lot consolidation is kind of up to snuff. We take it to Planning Commission for a approval of that as well. Once that's completed, we'll have a legal description for the lease. So one thing that could happen is if we can come to terms where everybody agrees, we can bring that to you in a draft form where it can be kind of approved. And then what we would need to do is just add that legal description to the lease before you finally approved it. And then it would become a completed document.
So the PC meets in like a week from tomorrow. So a week, just over August 28th. So just over 8 days.
Yeah, we were thinking, I'm sorry, September 25th. I should have been a little more clear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but we can meet that deadline. And then the next board meeting after that, I think, is the October 7th, I believe.
So you would have draft review for us on the 7th.
Potentially. And we could also, that draft ordinance, we could bring it back before that. It just wouldn't have the legal description. So you wouldn't be able to act on it, but we could kind of get like a nod of 4, like we kind of do sometimes, where we know the terms aren't going to change. We're just making sure that all the legal form of the document is correct.
More clarifying questions for Jen? Are you thinking we want Stephen to come up and talk at this point, or are we just, actually, I guess I didn't have it clear enough in my head what we were thinking about that right now.
He's here if you have questions for him, or if you do want to have some conversations, a discussion item, so that could happen. What we were looking for from a staff perspective is direction on these very specific
Those 4
questions.
questions.
Yeah.
You didn't hear me?
Yeah, and those 4 questions, so we're all on the same page, or on the same page as page 99 at the bottom. So the term 99 years, rental payments of $1 a year. The town agrees to waive the building permit fees, inspection fees, and plan review fees associated with the construction of the childcare center. The town waives or agrees to pay the water and sewer tap fees for Teens Inc. related to construction and improvements, but Teens Inc. would pay for all other utilities, gas, electric, water, sewage, and so pay for all charges for ongoing charges for gas, electric, water, sewage, and the cost of other utility services consumed at the property. So those are the questions before the board. We'll be getting to those, but I just wanted to be clear.
One that's missing on there is the survey.
Yeah, and that would be the final question is who pays for that survey?
Yep. Okay.
And just as I'm sorry, it's the survey cost estimated is $6,500.
Okay, cool. So those are the questions that we're, working towards nodding on. Stephen, is there something you want to say at this point, or, and we're going to have public comment, and then you'll be able to talk afterwards too. So.
Yeah, I'd rather talk.
When it's Stephen LeFevre of Teens Inc.
Stephen LeFevre, Executive Director of Teens Inc. I'd prefer to talk afterwards, but I do want to point out one thing is in this grant that we have in line an urgent need for moving this forward. We do have an MOU already in place with the Town of Nederland for Town of Nederland employees to receive a 15% tuition discount on New Explorers tuition. So that's I think kind of modeling that MOU is what we could do with larger residents with priority enrollment.
Thank you.
Stephen, can I ask you a really quick question too? Can you talk about any potential for, like, through CCAP or other programs that you offer for subsidized tuition for children at the childcare facility? Is that something that is okay?
Yeah. So we accept unlimited CCAP slots, which is unusual. So we want more CCAP children in our school. Where the challenge right now is we're so limited on space. So unlimited CCAP and then a sliding scale is what we offer for families that make above the CCAP limit and up to 325% federal poverty level. A sliding scale between 15 and 25% tuition.
That's already a huge improvement because before there used to be 2 preschools and I was the president of the board of Aspen Grove and we did CCAP. We had a cap on our CCAP, if you will. And Little Bear did no CCAP at all. So, you know, the fact that when Teens Inc. took over and the folks from Little Bear came and took over the facility of Aspen Grove or whatever it was, yeah. New Explorers, all of a sudden we had one program, but it was no cap on CCAP, so it was unlimited.
Yeah, and obviously schools limit CCAP because you don't get reimbursed the cost to run the school, which is why most often, why to run a school like that with unlimited CCAP and sliding scales, municipalities contribute annual operating costs. Any other questions?
Any more clarifying questions? If not, we'll go to public comment. We will start in the room. Public comment about the lease with Teens Inc. regarding a preschool. No, I think like you representing, my mind was we'd bring it back after, you know, public.
But if you've got other folks who want to speak, like now is the time.
Yeah. I would say just yourself, you could come and speak kind of maybe, you know, later, like and respond frankly to some of the public comments, one way or the other. And then, but I think other folks that may be here, you know, with Teens Inc., with, you know, now's your time for a public comment or when you're done.
Cool. Great. Stephen LeFavor, Executive Director of Teens Inc. On October 3rd, when we came, we had 52 children on the wait list, interest list at New Explorers. Now we have 81 children. 53 parents representing 68 children have filled out our survey, of which 44% live in Nederland, 72% in the 80466 area code. 73% of those children, the 68 children, want to enroll now or within the next year. 36% say they'd be eligible for tuition assistance. We have a grant outstanding for $800,000, which I was called to where I was contacted last week to ask the status of the lease. It's critical that we are able to move forward in as expedited a process as possible. I also just want to point out, like, affordable housing is critical. We know that. We also know that the people who work in this community on affordable housing needs, Effa and Kelly and Julie Van Domlin wrote support letters saying that, yes, housing is critical. And the most urgent need they see in families is childcare. Our goal all along has been to do this as quick as possible. You brought up timeline. If things work out and this grant comes through, we've got our builder on board, we've got our architect on board, we have a kickoff meeting. We're ready this can be done and open in August of 2026. We have a estimated cost right now of building costs of $4.25 million just for the building. The whole campaign's about $6.2 million when you include furniture and fixtures, playground, architectural fees. Of that, tap fees are included in that building cost of $4.25 million. Are included. I don't know what tap fees are. From what I've heard, around the $350,000. I haven't gotten a response. That's nearly 10% of our construction costs. We're shooting for 2026 to be open and bring in relief to these families that have voted 72%. That's why we asked. The permit fees, the other fees associated, where we're willing, we can take that on. Tap fees, I mean, we want to get it done in 2026. And we're not, you get through 2026, opening in early, I mean, there's a 3-month period for licensing to get in there before we can open. So our building is done on our timetable in June of 2026 and open in August 2026. And things need to work out to make that happen, including this grant that we just, who wants to know the status of the lease, as well as, a lot of other funding sources need to work with us to make it happen. 2027, with the extension's in there as a safety. But again, we know the short building season. We have our builders on board. We have the architects on board. There's a urgent, critical need within the community, and we're ready to address it if we can work together on it, which we are working together on it. We appreciate that we're here. We really know that it's been a lot of discussion and a lot of votes and a lot of resources put to it. And we're really looking forward to kind of making this happen, providing priority to the town of Nederland, Boulder Valley School District, whatever we work out, providing that tuition assistance to all families in need. The more the better is what we want. And also the tuition break to town of Nederland employees.
Stephen, what happens if the grant doesn't come through?
Oh, we're delayed.
Okay, so so talk to us more. So but if
This $800,000 is just, I mean, obviously that's 20% of our campaign.
Right.
It's a one-time. These are ARPA funds. If we had an opportunity to apply for this next year, we would have probably waited. But these are one-time. Colorado Department of Early Childhood. We've talked with Dr. Lisa Roy. We applied. We included the town of Nederland in the MOU in that. It's one time. My hunch, my hope is to get back with them tomorrow with a very good message versus having them reach out to me on Friday of this week and say, hey, how'd the meeting go? Like, what's the status of the lease? Because one is we move forward expeditiously on this grant because one, it's the end of the money's not available anymore. And two, well, we believed that we were moving forward quickly on this, and that's what the hope was. So that's why we applied. If we didn't have to apply and it was available next year, we would have. Yeah. So, and it's I want to also clarify, this is not a guarantee. I'm speaking, but I know it's not going to happen if we can't give a decent report on the lease. But I also know that funders usually don't reach out to you and say, hey, what's the status of something? If they don't want to fund you, they just kind of ixnay you and not waste the time.
Yeah.
And you know that one of my hangups was, goodness, we're giving up this land potentially and also being asked to take on those fees and everything. And so to hear that you're open to take those back on like that feels like it can expedite this even further. Because that was definitely going to be one of my hangups.
Well, and it's a catch-22 because we're paying 10% of our building costs to get something done, or we have $6.2 million to raise.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So 350,000, and I don't know what the fees are. Maybe they're 200.
But yeah, that's part. I mean, yeah, the part of it is we don't until there's plans and we know the diameter of water pipes and stuff like that.
0.75, and it says what I had heard from our initial meeting was they need to increase it to 1 inch. Sweet. 100,000.
Let's sign it now.
$250,000. So thank you. We'll take that.
Right.
If
Yeah, okay. And so I know we're not into discussion or, discussion quite yet, so we can
Okay.
wait to get there.
This is good. Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'll say, and I'll say it before, public comment too. Yeah, is like the building size, ultimately equals, how many bathrooms, how many water use, how many places to use water and how much water therefore. It went from 6,000 to 10,000 to 14,000. And like, to me, it was like, that's going to be an expense.
It's not
never ever went to 14,000.
That was misinformation.
Never went.
Oh,
to
that was
14,000.
okay, but even 10 was a big jump.
Well, and the SRU was approved at 9,800. That was that plan. And our goal is to make it as small as possible.
Yeah.
That's going to be a little bit of trust because we're not into it, but trust me.
Yeah.
The bigger the building, the more we have to raise.
That's exactly what I was going to say. And I mean, it's better, you build what you need and instead of having to raise that much more to build more than you need. And then you have the money.
We have absolutely.
Where we're tight, which is like, money we need to build future water plant, expand.
We have absolutely no reason, no hope in building a building bigger than what we need.
Cool.
And we believe that we are going to be able to definitely cut off from that 9,800 that was in those conceptuals.
Mhm.
For sure. And it is our goal to go as small as possible while meeting the community need. And honestly, with a little bit of growth. So we're not going to, if we strive to open at 65 youth, we really don't want 65 youth on day one. Like, it would be much better to have 50 and have some space for if other projects come up that add to capacity, and also population ebbs and flows in Nederland with children. But I guarantee you, we are not wanting to build a building larger than what we have. And I believe strongly that that conceptual plan was larger than where we should end up. And just, Nicole, on the tap fees, like, it's a question back a little bit to like how we see it as a critical, urgent, serious need that a year has a huge impact on families. A massive impact on families, based on kind of the data we have and what we've heard. And 72% of the folks voted in favor. And I know that lease was not part of that vote, but it surely was online and in the paper.
Any more clarifying questions for Stephen before we go to public comment? Tanya?
No, I have a question for town staff.
Go for it.
Yeah, like, can I ask it now?
Yeah, if this is like kind of a clarifying question, yeah. If it's more of a discussion item, we'd probably go after public comment. But if it's a clarifying question, now is good.
But my question is, what's the soonest we can get a lease completed?
If we get direction from the board tonight on these items and Teens Inc. agrees to them, I think we could likely have the lease wrapped up in the next few days. Jennifer or Attorney Madsen is online and she could probably give a little bit more feedback. We have a meeting tomorrow with the Teens Inc. team to try to, just as a touch base after this meeting. And so if we're able to agree on terms, I think that between them, the attorneys could get this into final form relatively quickly, like within the next few days. I did want to note, you would have the possibility, if you wanted to have a special session to approve the final draft of this lease, but I don't know that it would necessarily change the timeline because we have to go to PC.
Right. I was just going to add that we do need that legal description for the lease. And Teens is aware that we need that legal description, so that would happen at the September 25th meeting. So approval date earliest would be October 1st.
Wait, the PC September 25th.
Yes,
So
unless you wanted to have a
even
special
though,
meeting.
even though we could potentially have it done on our end in a few days, with town staff and BOT agreeing, because it has to go to the PC, that's just the,
And also the time.
then the soonest is like a month.
Also, what, say that?
The survey. We
Okay.
need to complete the
Well,
survey so I can complete the application.
So yeah, the survey is another step in there. So that September 25th is probably the realistic time for it to go to the PC, and it has to go to the PC.
So we're
What's the
talking about-
notification for that? Is it 15 days or?
Okay.
Yeah, I need to do public notice and letters within 15 days of that meeting, which I've already set that timeline, but I also need to make sure the survey is going to be done.
So it's our most critical path right now.
Yep. And so we'd like to, get that answer.
So, Stephen, I know your timeline is yesterday, but like,
Okay.
what's it, what realistically, what do you need for a lease timeline?
I think if I was able to report to the Colorado Department of Early Childhood that this meeting happened and pretty much the terms are in place and we're waiting on this lot to be consolidated, which has already been approved. And it's just an administrative thing and it will be, should be executed in early October at the October 1 meeting. That I think that that's the best case scenario and the best thing that we could report to them. And I don't know how they'll respond, but that's as good as we can. If that's as good as we can do, then that is as good as we can do. And I think that would be a great report back to them.
Cool.
If we can agree on terms and this direction is okay with you all, would it help to strengthen a letter of support from like an official letter signed that shows that that is our intention as well? Because we could do that too.
It certainly would. I mean, I think we had to give them what we had in that email last week, and it was it wasn't as strong. But if we're able to get them a strong report back, they would probably really appreciate that, and it would go a long way.
Cool, thanks. Well, we may very well bring you up later. So now we're gonna go to public comment about the Teens Inc. lease of our land, town land for, and we're gonna start in the room, folks. Go ahead. Just give us your name and your relationship to town.
Yeah, my name is Craig Van Sant. In full disclosure, I just joined the board of Teens Inc. So I have a somewhat vested interest in this. But I want to urge you all to think about the mindset with this. I used to work in the real estate industry, and there was often, I don't want to say adversarial, but there was a conflict of interest between landlord and tenant. And I don't want that to be happening here. This is a partnership between the town of Nederland and Teens Inc. to meet a critical need in the community, which we've seen through the discussions and the referendum voting. So I hope that as you all discuss the various questions that are being posed to you, that you will think of it in terms of a partnership and how we can all work together to meet this need. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comment. More public comments?
Hi, everyone. I'm Larissa Albright Brown. I live on Pine Glade Road. I've spoken to many of you about this same topic, but I felt like it was important to come here tonight to support Stephen and Teens Inc. with what I think is probably the most, the final hurdle in really getting this project actually going. Did I start off by saying thank you all for your service? That's been my plan in my head while I've been listening forever, but
You implied it.
it's my first week back to school this week, so I'm just getting my groove back. But I just
Thank you for your service to our our kids at the elementary?
I think it probably makes sense to most of you who know I've been connected with a lot of your kids in some way that I really understand how important this need is to the community from a variety of different levels. From seeing the impact of the early childhood or lack of early child care impacting the elementary school and the high school and declining enrollment there. It really is the preschool or early childhood through senior year issue that we're addressing by getting more childcare. But right now, I think Stephen has worked really hard to get all of the pieces that he needs in line for this project. And he's proven his track record with Teens Inc. and how successful they are, that he can manage these grants and use grant funds correctly. He's done that with a lot of other initiatives in the past 10 years at the elementary school and the middle school and high school. And some of those projects are still continuing, including the SEL work that a lot of your kids benefit from. So he's proven that he knows how to secure these grants and manage them. But if he doesn't move forward with this project with the timeline that's already been held back by taking it to a local vote, he could lose that funding. So I'm just asking, and it sounds like you're there, which is great. But I just came to ask everyone tonight to really do whatever we can to make sure that the logistics and the requirements on your end, anything that you can do, like the letter of support, I think that's really great. But if you could please make sure that the town is supporting teens with not losing any of that funding. I believe it was 800,000 and then also $1 million. Was that the other one? Yeah, so anything that he can do to make sure that he doesn't lose that, because that could stop the project. So if you could please do that, I would really appreciate it. Also, something that came up tonight at the meeting, and this maybe was the real reason I ended up here without knowing. I heard you mention something about a priority for Nederland residents. And I know that that's been an ongoing issue. Taking it to the local town people to vote. That's been hard for me since I've been part of this community for a long time, but I don't live in town. But when you say that you're going to prioritize spots for Ned residents, I do think that that's a happy balance of some of the concerns that have come up with people who live in town limits, and offering government workers like the town workers support. Can I just finish this for a minute? Yeah. I didn't know I was timed today. I thought we were just like chatting.
No, we're quiet. We got the timers going.
Okay. But if you could also think about prioritizing that spots for people who provide community services in Nederland. It's come up in a lot of meetings, teachers, firefighters, paramedics, that their lack of childcare is impacting their ability to work up here. And when I sort of thought about it, there's several staff members who are longstanding veteran staff at the elementary school right now that live outside of town limits, but have worked up here for over 10 years. And we face the challenge of staff coming and going. So if we have staff that are living up here, working up here and raising their families up here, it would be great for them to have priority care in town as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Larissa. I appreciate you being here again.
Everyone, I'm Jen Careau. I am Board of Directors President for Teens Inc. and I live in Nederland. I live on Big Springs. So thank you all for doing your work. And I just wanted to say that I appreciate how far you've gotten us, how far you've gotten this project and the support we've seen from you. And we are really excited to work with you further and soon. So thank you. Everyone else has said everything else I would say. So urgency and appreciation. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Any more comments from folks in the room? Jim?
Jim Reese, 66 Barker Road, Nederland, Colorado. I also would encourage the board to approve, or at least come up with a framework to approve tonight. I think this is the most consequential opportunity for our community since Tungsten Village was approved. And I was here for 2 years and asking the board to approve that. It was quite a fight. And I think it's been a wonderful addition to our community. I understand that you have to be good stewards of the town's dollars, and we are tight right now. But when we talk about a $6.2 million investment in our community, which is not just our community, but a regional need, I listened, just like you do, to public comment. of 40 people that came up here and said, if I don't have childcare, I don't see a long-term future in this community. I'm driving over an hour to drop my kids off down in Lafayette, and it's killing me. You know, so I encourage the BOT to look at an opportunity to fast track this vote and have a little skin in the game and say, you know, we're willing to throw in the tap fees on this because this is that important to our community, and we want to do everything we can to advance this and meet that 2026 prior to school starting August opening date. So I hope you will just consider what a consequential project this is and what we can do to advance it. I think we should. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. More public comments on Teens Inc., please? Okay, I think it's everyone in the
Hello?
room, folks online. Folks
Hello?
online, yeah, Kathleen, go ahead.
Kathleen Shipai, 33-year resident, 22-year business owner. I'm really flabbergasted because when this was put on the ballot, specifically, we asked if the 99-year lease for $1 a year was going to be included on that ballot question, and Admin Fisher said no, that would come in later, and there'd be plenty of discussion. Now I'm shocked that none of the board members even seem to care. Apparently, it's all going to be rushed right through. I'm a little shocked at that. I would expect at minimum from town staff a breakdown of all of the fees, permits, costs that are being waived and that will become the expense of the Nederland residents. I'm just shocked at what I'm hearing. By the way, I can't stand when I hear people lie. And it was just implied by Stephen himself that 14,000 square feet was never brought up. I have a copy of the email that he himself sent to Karen Blakemore. Straight up question from Karen Blakemore, how big will this building be? It was 14,000 square feet, Stephen. So let me correct you. I'm also going to take into consideration tonight that people went over their time limit. And I hope that's extended when other people need their time limits to go over. And I'm also going to hope that the extension of just trust me, which is what I heard from Stephen 3 times tonight, is going to be also applied to people like Ron Mitchell, who are trying to get projects done that include housing. And apparently, I'm just shocked because every time Ron made a change in his parking lot, it was a parking lot for 30 years. All he wanted to do was charge people because he needed to, because he couldn't write off the maintenance of his parking lot with the IRS. And this town, I don't know how many times they made Ron Mitchell go back to the planning commission and hearing after hearing because they said it was a change of use from free parking for 30 years to paid parking. Okay, nobody trusted Ron Mitchell. Okay, so this is shocking to me. And I think that the taxpayers in the Netherlands deserve a little more respect, especially when Admin Fisher promised us that the 99-year lease for $1 a year and all the intricacies of the lease would have plenty of time to be discussed. And now here we are blowing through, hey, I need this tomorrow. I needed this letter last week, tomorrow, 24-hour notice. So I'm not happy with the way this is going. And I would like a breakdown that is submitted to the public so they can see exactly what costs they will either be funding themselves or waiving. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen. More public comment from folks online? Yeah, May, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. May Gerald. I live in the neighborhood, Dyer's neighborhood. And I kind of have to agree with Kathleen. The same process is being used here as was used with the SRU, and that is a lot of people get up and talk about how we have a need for childcare. That's not the question. The question is, what can the town afford? I didn't get to hear the full discussion. I think it was kind of skipped over. Our budget, $666,000 short on property tax of the estimate, and other big discrepancies in the budget, over budgeting revenue. So it's really not, do we support childcare? Of course we do. How much can we afford to support it? Jim Reese says we should throw some skin in the game. Wow. You know, like that land isn't enough skin. And then there's the question of the tapestry of the town. We just heard from Colorado Wildfire Partners about the need to protect watersheds, of fire-ready watersheds. This is your last chance here in terms of cleaning water or whatnot in the event of a flood after a fire. These values aren't being assigned. We still don't know how they came up with the $200,000 valuation that was touted in the paper for this property, which is ridiculous. So what I would like to say is, if you are going to be rushing it through and giving away the lease and who knows what else, that I wish you'd address the points that I made in my letter to the board, which are future costs down the road. Number one, if there's a traffic monitor that needs to handle traffic on the highway, and those of us that live over here know all about that, who's going to pay for that? Who's going to pay if there's flooding downstream on the floodplain? There are a lot of houses, a library on the floodplain. Who's going to pay for that? The other point I brought up is, if there is spot contamination, which we can anticipate, who's going to pay for that remediation? So Teens Inc. is looking for a regional project. I've said from the beginning that this thing is going way too fast. It's way too big. Okay, now, you know, first it was 6,000 and 8,000, then it was 10, 12, 14, 10. How big is it? I mean, you didn't even know, Steve, when you first approached the board, that you couldn't have uses other than childcare on the second floor. Now I find out that all from the early childhood education people, that if you have a safety plan approved by the fire department, you can have the little kids on the second floor, no apartment renting or anything like that.
May I go
So
ahead and
that
wrap
would
it up, Ken?
preclude the gigantic building. So I just urge you to consider one expense at a time, starting with the survey. If Teens Inc. can afford a $6.5 million building, and we're giving them the land for nothing, if that's what you're going to vote on, and I'm sure you are, then either in a memorandum of understanding or something, these issues that I bring up, flooding, contamination, traffic, need to be addressed somehow, or the lease is not complete.
Thanks,
and you're
May.
not doing your job. Thank you, Billy.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Are there more public comments for folks online? If not, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board for discussion.
Just to clarify, May, I don't know if this was what you intended, but our property tax revenue is actually showing an increase of 6,518. I thought you had said that there was a deficit, but it's actually showing an increase at this point. So I just want to clarify that point.
Thank you. So to bring it back to the questions before the board, yeah, I think there's 5 questions now. 99 years, $1 a year. Permit fees, if fees, and then the other one was costs.
Are we going to do these individually or?
Yeah, actually, that's a great idea. I mean, I think some just need less discussion than others, but let's go to the first one, which is a term of 99 years. With actually good call. The first two, 99 years, $1 a year.
Well, I mean, I like, do we do them one at a time? Because I know that Trustee Larson has some feeling about them being tied together. So that's more of a question than.
Oh, okay.
Let's charge down that path.
Answer is we're going to do the first two together and then the other ones we're going to do individually. Good questions. So I lean towards, when we get to that point, make the term of 99 years and sticking with that dollar. I think part of why I lean towards that is where I lean on the other points.
I think, I'll jump in. You called me out there. Yeah, they are obviously linked because this is all, come together, but, with $1 a year lease at 99 years, then I am in support of that with the caveat that the other fees that the town needs to be owed are paid by Teens Inc. If the board decides to negotiate such that we are giving up the tap fees, then that might change the opinion on the lease. So with my little tipping my hand here towards a later one about the PIF fees and permit fees, then I'd be in support of the $1 a year for 99.
Okay, other folks?
Yeah, I mean, I mostly agree that, they're all woven together, but I think a term of 99 years and $1 a year, there is some question of trying to offset, costs of if we're going to waive fees. But I think there's other ways to talk about, other ways of compensating for those fees rather than a change in the lease term and amount. I think that's the way I feel on that. So I feel like I'm pretty comfortable saying we could do 99 years for $1 a year and find some other way to negotiate on fees and PIF fees and everything else.
Okay, thank you.
I was originally, a big advocate of some sort of land swap or being able to have Teensy purchase the land from us, so that maybe we could have purchased, new Explorers, or like I said, land swap or something, because I do recognize the criticality of losing that parcel of land for affordable housing. And we can go back all, what's more critical, childcare or affordable housing. I really see there's so much how they're in parallel and linked. And I'm willing to not necessarily push so hard on a land swap. And I'm willing to support the 99-year lease at $1 if Teensy takes on the PIF fees and the permit fees. A little bit of an information for those of you who haven't been tracking us. I know you'd like to follow us in everything that we're doing, but we have a rate study in the midst, a rate study that looks at our water and sewer, and it is very likely that the fees that you end up paying are actually not even going to cover the costs of what we have to increase our rates to in 2025. So that's the piece that I'm thinking of in our operations. How do I balance the need for criticality and helping you move forward? And then how do you help us make sure that cost isn't pushed further onto the rest of the ratepayers, which would be the rest of the citizens? So it's me.
Just a quick clarification on that. How much does the PIF fee relate to ongoing rate fees? Right. So we're talking about like what you pay for your water bill every month versus
the rate study also does the PIF fees analysis.
Right. But we're talking about like, okay, this is the PIF fee is a one-time deal. If we waive the PIF fee, that doesn't change how much Teens is going to pay for water on an ongoing basis going forward.
Right, but if we don't waive the PIF fee, the reality is next year, the PIF fees probably would have been higher anyways. So in some ways, we're giving a good deal on the PIF fee, which obviously today we're giving the deal that is, but the rate study is likely to show us that our PIF fees are too low. And as much as I hate saying it, people hate hearing it.
Yeah. No, I understand. I'm just trying to get clear on what's the balance of the one-time fee versus the ever increasing rate fee that we're all going to be paying if we if we waive a PIF, obviously that puts a deficit into our water budget. But that just happens.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
Jess?
yeah. PIF fees an initial investment and rates are ongoing.
So our, if our
Operations.
rates aren't covering the cost of our infrastructure, like that's,
The rates cover the cost of producing the water and treating the wastewater. The PIF fees cover the cost of the facility itself and the necessary upgrades when we need it.
right.
So by
Infrastructure.
Yeah,
Right.
so if we were to grant there, not charge the PIF fee, then that will be amortized upon all the users of the facility when we need to upgrade or when we need the new grid system.
Right.
Those pieces then are not being paid for by the PIF fees, but by all users as part of their rates.
Right.
And there will be potentially from the rate study, a gap, even from what we're offering the PIP fees today and the increase that we'll get.
There is one thing just to note too. It is currently a 3/4 inch line and we anticipate it needing to be upsized, but it's possible that doesn't need to happen. And we don't have enough information to say that. So we're talking about money that's what makes this conversation difficult is we don't actually know what that number is, because if it doesn't require an upgrade, the cost is going to be negligible.
So how much, I mean, just as it relates to this lease, how much of this do we need to finalize in order to finalize a lease? Can we, I don't know, offload some of these decisions about how much of these fees the town is willing to cover or not cover as a separate agreement between teens and the town? Doesn't relate to the lease. Since we're not going to know what those numbers are until we have building plans, like it just seems that's a hard thing to commit.
The problem is that it affects the lease. We're not going to have those numbers probably, I would imagine, for a few months until they have like a level of design that they can share with the town where we'll know those things. And so the lease document really what we've heard from Teens Inc. is that the capital stack for this project is what's critical right now to make sure that they can access all the funding they need. And I think that in some ways, this is a pretty critical piece of that. Like it kind of determines what they're able to build and how they're able to build it. So I think that it might be worthwhile to have language in there that covers how this would be handled or what the agreement might be. And again, maybe this is a good question for Attorney Madsen. Like, is there a way that we could structure this so that there is a flexibility for a future conversation? But I think that we want to cover, I think that was one of the questions that came up in, with Teens Inc. I think it's critical for their piece, but maybe Stephen's a better person for that question too.
But this is also why I would love to settle on language as close as possible and get them a lease agreement. And, if that means, yes, we're good with the 99 years, we're good with $1 each year, we pay permits and PIF fees, and it's clean, and they can go do what they need to do. Stephen, were you going to say something?
I'm going to just throw a little time into the mix. So we have to extend the meeting beyond 10. We're going to go ahead and bump the next discussion item to a later meeting, but we still have to give time at the end for a public comment, non-agenda items. So be quick and clear with your questions at this point. Go ahead.
Can I offer that if it sounds like if there is no increase, the cost is negligible. If there is an increase, the cost is around $100,000. What if it was like not to exceed $150,000 fee, like a not to exceed amount?
Hypothetically, I mean, and again, I would have concern of writing that into the beginning, because what if it comes back as 250 or something?
What if you need a 2-inch line?
Or you need a 2-inch line, right? Like I to what John said, that's what makes this conversation so difficult.
I think, what Stephen's saying is like, the town will cover a PIF fee up to $100,000. And then if it's more than that, it's on teens to cover the difference.
No.
Is that what-
Oh,
is that- was that
I
what you're
was saying, I was saying the opposite. I was saying the opposite, but that sounds fine.
No,
You're saying you'll cover up to $150,000.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah,
saying.
right.
I mean, or 200. I
Yeah.
mean,
right. Okay. So,
like what, like,
but it's also, it's not just the PIF, it's also the permit fee for the building,
Yeah.
which could be, you know,
Yeah, we can't, it's hard to even base what that's gonna be right now because we don't have plans. Yeah.
I do have some kind of bigger picture thoughts
Sure.
on this. So, and I'll try and go quick. You know, as this facility grows into its shoes over on that end of town, like there's going to be changes to traffic patterns, children crossing, like the town is going to need to invest quite a bit in transportation, safety, traffic flow around that part of the peak, right? Like obviously there's CDOT there, there's a lot of other things going on there, but that will involve investment from the town in order to facilitate safe transportation to and from the school. And so I think there's going to be a lot of things that the town is going to do to support teens down the road, infrastructure wise. And so we might want to just stick with like, you guys for this initial investment cost, it's part of building the building. We are going to be committed to supporting the facility and the infrastructure around it so that it's a success.
It's
Okay,
just,
other comments?
yeah, just to weigh in on this, agree with Nicole at this point. I think, obviously we've all identified that this is a critical need. I'm good with the 99 years, $1 a year, and then asking teens to pay all the permitting fees and the PIF fees, at this point. I think it makes sense. I think it seems like the right balance.
And does that include the survey that
Thank
they
you,
need to get
yes.
started tomorrow?
Yes.
Agreed. I agree completely.
quick question, just to address May Gerald's concerns regarding spot contamination, flooding.
Actually, real quick, I have to move to extend the meeting.
Oh, yep.
How much time do you think we need? We really are gonna just give direction on these 5 things. We have to give 5 minutes, let's say, for public comment and non-agenda items. How about 20 minutes? And then we are.
I mean, let's
15
just
plus
give it
5?
30, just so we have plenty of time.
Okay.
Because we have to give.
I'm fine with that.
very-
So
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. So I'll make a move to extend the meeting, and I don't want to use it all. That doesn't mean we have to use it. It's not to exceed. Yeah, it just wastes time. So I'd like to make a motion, thanks, Tanya, to extend the meeting till 10:30.
Second.
Macy?
Trustee Larson,
No.
trustee Maris,
Yes.
trustee Miller,
Yes.
Good job.
trustee Ty,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling,
Yes.
Yeah.
trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
and Mayor Billy.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. Whoever was going. Go ahead,
Question
Nicole.
regarding the things Gerald had brought up. You know, what if there is spot contamination or flooding happens and there's damage to the property? Who is the onus on to repair that?
With the way the contract is written, the town can't be negligent in an action that causes a problem like that. But what I would propose is that we would go through an engineering review of the civil documents, which would go through JVA, our engineering firm, who typically does our floodplain work as well. We do know there's groundwater issues in Nederland, so we want to make sure that we do review the plans and make sure we're covered on those bases. But that would be how I would control for those factors. And then if Teens Inc. were to do something that caused source point pollution, which is, I think, probably unlikely that we would see something like that happen if we go through the engineering process, they would be responsible for it, not the town. It's just if we did something that was negligent, it would be us.
But if it's like straight up natural disaster, like, you know, I mean, not that creek's going to flood, but you never know.
I think act of God would be a
Yeah.
kind of a situation that we would be looking for disaster funding from
Yeah.
FEMA and things like that.
But like, I mean, who's responsible for, dealing with that, right? Like, is that something?
The
that-
landowner probably.
Probably,
Okay, so
they'd
that-
be responsible for their building. We'd probably be responsible for any impacts on the land.
Got it.
And then, I'll just slightly bring up this point. Trustee Miller, when you brought up, hey, working on some of the traffic infrastructure around it, I think that makes sense and it's something I'd be on board. And then just slight reminder that there was a there was a daycare that operated on the opposite side of the street for 30 years.
But it's a big difference being on the other side of the street.
Is it?
I mean, it was on the other side of the highway, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was on the
Yeah,
other side of
yeah,
the highway.
Right, but that's my point. It's like, you're not crossing the highway to get to it.
Depends on what direction you're coming.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
there's a potential that it almost, depending on your direction that you're coming from.
You
Yeah.
guys also have received almost $3 million for projects to improve pedestrian safety in the general vicinity of the new daycare facility through TIPS and Safer Main Street. So
yeah, and
This would be
that's-
a
I
nice
mean,
add-on.
Yeah, and a lot of that is my point. Like that's something we want to do, is to improve safety between the community center, childcare center, library zone, like that. Those areas need, like, up to the elementary school, like that all needs like safer, easier pedestrian access. So, and that makes all of those facilities more successful.
I just don't want it to be an argument against and to like impede the progress, because again, 30 years and it's just something to solve for, right? Not an obstacle to create.
More comments?
Well, I'd like to comment that, currently the high schoolers are walking along the side of the highway with zero improvement to that road, regardless of how
Yeah.
many times people have complained, and everyone's managed to make it. In the elementary school, also people are getting there, they're crossing the highway to get there. So I'm not worried about that. It's hopefully everyone can use common sense when dealing with traffic, and I trust that people will. And that we were saying the Safer Main Street is coming, and there was going to be quite a bit of crosswalks added and safety features to the highway within Nederland. So, I see that the majority of the board is for the 99-year lease for $1 a year, and not too many people have an appetite for any reductions in fees. Personally, I'd be good with 20% of permitting fees as an act of good faith and showing of support for this really necessary project. We've given away our land for much less, I think, things such as the wetland, fisherman's lot, gave that away without much of a conversation, really. Chris Larson voted in favor of it, and there was no issues. Now all of a sudden, giving away this lot is like the biggest thing we could ever do for our community, as like, oh my God, how could we give away town land? I mean, for a preschool, to support our families in our community and the future of our, community. So I don't think offering 20% off of permitting fees would be that much skin off our back, and it would really show a lot. But then I also do know that we're in a deficit with no real means of getting out of it. So that's the reality of our finances. So that's unfortunate, but it's true. So we're not really in a position to be giving away much financially, but I'd like to still do it. So.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Tanya. I mean, because I feel like, everything we can do to support this is important. I heard from staff at the elementary school about how critical this project is.
Critical. Yeah.
And, but that's the truth, right? Like, we do not have budget to spare, but there are things we can do, and that's why I brought up the transportation stuff, because that's something we can do with grant money to help support this project, where it doesn't come out of town budget, where we really don't have a lot of room. And so I think we should really be creative. And John, I appreciate your continued creativity of ways of coming up with money. And I think that's something we can all learn from to like, let's find ways to support this project that doesn't like drain our very meager financial resources. Because I think we do have a lot, like we have a lot of other ways we can be supportive. So I would encourage us to be creative and find ways to help this go without busting the bank.
Yeah, so I think,
Would it be helpful for Stephen to amortize the fees? Or does it not matter?
What do you mean?
Well, like instead of having it get paid all at once, we did it for the dyno moves. They came in and they said, we can't afford the PIF fees all at once. Can we do it as a payment plan? And I forgot the terms, but we approved it. So, I mean, is that something that would be helpful? Or is it just doesn't really matter?
No, that would be helpful. I mean, I don't know when they're even due. When are they due? Do you pay them
Well,
the end
usually
of the
due right
project
away, I
or the
think.
beginning of the
Never.
project, or when do you pay these?
You pay them.
I don't know.
I think it's at like application, time of application.
Yeah, so if it was potential, I mean, again, we don't know how much they are. If there was potential of being like over 2 years, we can split it up in 2 payments. That could be helpful, but I'm not sure. And I don't know if that's necessary for the lease. But grant funding, as I spoke with John, is like, we're good. We would happily take on the project of writing a safe streets to schools grant for the town. I mean, we would want to do as much as we can to improve that whole area there. And we're happy to take that on as a Teens Inc. project to support, to make this happen, to make it better. As we've, and then, the land is we can't do this without the land. It's a 99 year for $1 a year is a pretty common thing in government and partnerships to make projects happen that government can't do. Anything above that shows incredible support for our grant and our fundraising efforts. That a 99 saying, oh, we got a 99-year lease for a year to a funder is cool. So did these folks and these folks and these folks. And, there was even a bit more. Goes a long way.
Yeah, and in that vein, like you brought up the letter, a letter from the town, a letter of support or whatever for you guys to share, like what else is there that we can do that's not waiving fees?
Right. Well, traffic.
Yeah. I think that's our direction.
More comments?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe so. The only question I'd have is if Attorney Madsen had any thoughts about whether or not we could structure the lease so we can get to a version, or Teens Inc. does, in a way that lets us determine what the fees are, so the actual fiscal impact on the budget, because we're working in a vacuum right now. So it would be nice to be able to have that conversation, but I know that's balanced against expediting this process to a reasonable extent. And so I didn't know if maybe there's a way that we could do that, but that would be my last question, just so you guys have all the information you need.
Is
I
that a
think
question
that
for? Okay, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, go.
Oh,
Jeff,
sorry.
go ahead.
I think it's really a question for Stephen in terms of, we can definitely draft it so that it's a separate issue aside from the lease. That's typically how these things come to the board, is they come as a request and there's consideration. And if there's a waiver or some change in how payment is done, the board approves that through a resolution. So we could definitely do it so that it is an after the fact consideration once more information is known.
if we did that, we're not waiving any fees though, is it?
Yeah,
a
it's,
moot
that's not
point?
necessary. Yeah, we just give direction. To the $99 lease, 1 year, pay survey, pay the PIF, and pay the permit fees. That's what I'm advocating for. That's what I would suggest.
Here.
And then we'll do, I mean, we'll do everything we can from as creative and non-financial way as possible in order to expedite and support.
Yeah, and I think writing that into our strategic plan for next year of working on that traffic bend right there, I think would show
And-
earnest.
And between there and the elementary school too, like if the elementary, the elementary doesn't have after hours daycare, so if there's a way for kids to get down to the preschool, so they could have aftercare.
Let's resurrect the trail to the high school that we proposed 20 years ago too.
Amen to that. Let's get that one done too.
All in. So we have 2 nods for that proposal.
Luke,
Specifically,
the bus takes the kids to the daycare.
Yeah, I was just thinking it, I mean, it'd be great to have more connections there so that kids can be outside.
And Nikki and Nicole, so it's 2 nods for $99 and basically and then
Paying the fees.
Teams Inc. pays
The PIF.
all PIF, permit, and the survey.
Yeah.
And I'm just because I know we've talked about it is of the building permit fees, some of that goes to Safe Build, thank you. And some of that goes to the town.
Yes.
I know we don't have like the budget to do a ton of discounts, but the money to Safe Build has to be paid anyway. So I don't think that's something we can waive because that comes out of our budget regardless. But if we could offer some amount of discount on the amount that comes out of the town budget, I mean, it's not going to be a lot, but.
Well, in this regard, it will be several $1,000s that go towards Brits in our planning time. It's like operational budget that goes towards the review of those things.
Right, but I'm just saying if it's, okay, so say it's $5,000, $10,000, like that's not going to break town bank, but.
If that breaks their budget, they have bigger problems.
No, it's
a
more
$6
just-
million project.
Yeah.
It's over $5 million a year. I think we're in more desperate need than they are.
I think I'm a third nod on.
I think what the point is that Stephen was saying that it looks to the
Looks
grant
good. We're doing what we can.
committees that the town is supporting them. Yeah, in a way a little bit more than what we're offering on the table. It's something they can write in on the grant to differentiate them from a different
And
application.
honestly, I think us focusing on that traffic piece, I think that's huge. I mean, that's going to be millions of dollars of more grant dollars to ask for, potentially.
Millions
Well, I mean,
of dollars.
potentially.
Working with CDOT.
We're making an underpass.
Between tips and safer main streets right now.
Are you
I think
talking
it
a
is.
bridge from the community center over the highway? I mean,
It's going to be more expensive than waiving $5,000 or $10,000.
No, I mean, I think my point was just, like Tanya said, like it's just this is a token thing that we can do. It looks good. It's not going to break our bank. It's not a keystone in their budget. It just looks good to show our support.
I lean towards, I think I'm with Nicole and Chris on this, that I just feel like you're good at raising money, and this is a place where we need that money. And I like the lease as it is, and just the fees, all the fees and the survey costs.
I can, an amendment to this is, they move forward with the 500 for the, right? If for any reason they decide not to build, we'll pay them back on that. How about that?
well, yeah, we already agreed on that.
Yes, we did.
We just,
Yeah. So you're not really giving anything new to the table, but.
I think town staff is committed to finding other funding sources that may be appropriate for us to supply it to. And if we can find a creative funding source, we'd love to continue that conversation. 'Cause if there's something, we can, and it's just work, we can put that together.
All for
You guys set?
I'm with you.
So we have fourth nod then. Yeah.
Same.
Fifth.
Okay, we made it 5.
What else do you need from us, Jonathan?
I think that's it.
Okay. Oh. I was gonna move to end, but I forgot.
Well, okay, cool. So a couple things real fast. So I think we've answered the question, so we can move ahead with, hopefully setting up the survey as soon as tomorrow. I'll get that situated, and then start moving towards getting what we need for the September 25th Planning Commission meeting, and then we meet on October 1st. So we'll move as we can, and obviously those steps just need to happen
As quickly as possible.
I forgot, there was one request for, and I did have that just came up in this. Are you comfortable with writing a strong letter of support that indicates this position?
100%. Make it like
Absolutely.
super strong to where people would cry when they read it.
Thank you.
Okay, that's what we need.
Yes. Tears.
Thanks. Now, there was another discussion item on the 2024 model traffic code. We're going to reschedule that since it's a discussion item. I don't have to pick a date right now. We'll do that soon. And with that, we will move to public comment on non-agenda items. Is there any comment in the room on non-agenda items? If not, we'll go online if there's any public comment on a non-agenda item.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Kath.
Kathleen, step by. I sent letters about both my non-agenda public comments. One, I'm very eager to see the Big Pharma Department of Defense bioweapon marketing taken off the town website. At this point, it's disgusting. And all I think about is my friend Sharon, who ran the visitor center, dying a day after getting her jab, and my friend Andy, and other artists in the community that died. It's not the government's business to be telling residents anything about medical anything. I hope we've all learned our lesson, and I'm hoping we could get that damn number off the top of the town website. It's disgusting. And I don't even think anybody's called it because it doesn't have anything to do with vaccines at this point. Secondly, my other public comment is we have Chris Larson violating the very clear term limit, constitutional term limit language. And apparently, Billy and the town attorney don't interpret term limit language the way the rest of the state would interpret town language. I'm not happy with this at all. Chris Larson and Jen Madsen knew about this, and they knew that Chris needed to wait 4 years in 2022 when I initially filed my initial code complaint on him running in 2022. He, instead of taking care of this at the time, he just didn't run. And then Jen Madsen didn't feel the need to advise town staff that maybe we better, or the BOT, maybe we better clarify this. And I think what we need to clarify is that there are term limits. They were passed by the voters of the state of Colorado. And that's for a reason. People don't want people to be able to rotate back and forth and spend their life on the board of trustees, whether they're the mayor or the trustee. If you want to change that, you need to put that in front of the voters. And we could have done that in the last April election. Everyone was aware that this was happening back in 2022, and we didn't. So, I mean, legally right now, he should be booted off the board of trustees. Okay, and the person that came in after him, whoever was fourth, should be the elected official on the board. I don't see anybody having the balls to do that, which is a shame because, again, we follow the laws only when we want to follow them, which is just pathetic. I am just asking for some consistency and the fact that the town would abide by by the voters. Constitutional amendment, for Christ's sake. It's not asking much, but I see that's probably not going to happen. But that's what I am voting for, is whoever, that Chris Larson be removed from the board because he's termed out, and that whoever came in fourth, which I believe is Jesse Severs, is actually the voted on member of the Board of Trustees. So that's where I'm putting it. And maybe I'll
Thank
be able
you.
to convince a local who voted to take it to court, and we'll resolve it that way. So he does follow the rules like the rest of us have to. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen. Appreciate it. Good night. Any other comments on non-agenda items?
A motion to adjourn.
You have a motion to
Second.
adjourn? Second, third, fifth, sixth, seventh? Go ahead. Mason.
Mayor Beverly,
Yes.
Trustee Miller,
Yes.
Trustee Corvin,
Yes.
Trustee Ty,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling,
Yes.
Trustee Maris.
Yes.
And Trustee Larson.
Yes, with full support of all vaccines and science.
Okay, thank you. The meeting is adjourned at
Thank you
10:20
for,
PM. The meeting is adjourned at 10:20 PM.
perfect. You got that line. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time.